Close your eyes for a moment, and imagine this. Every step you've ever taken, every thought you've ever entertained, every choice you've ever made, splits into another version of you. Not in some distant universe you'll never touch, but right here, layered quietly within reality. You are one, but you are also countless. Each breath you take belongs to someone else too. Someone who chose differently, who spoke a word you held back, who walked away instead of staying. And if those versions of you still exist, the question isn't whether you are unique, it's whether you are ever whole. Tonight on the present path, we follow the threads of your infinite selves. Stay until the end, because every version of you is waiting here, listening together, breathing in unison, splitting in silence. Imagine standing in a quiet room where nothing seems to move. The air is still, the walls are plain, and the clock on the shelf ticks faintly in the background. At first it feels like an ordinary moment, one of those countless pauses in life where time doesn't seem to press you forward. But look closely, and you begin to sense it. The silence isn't empty, it's crowded. With every breath, something splits. With every thought, another version of you steps out, invisible to your eyes yet present enough that the room feels too full for its size. You shift your hand slightly, but another you kept it still. You blink, but another you stared forward without moving. You whispered a word once, and another version of you swallowed it back. The silence is no longer silence. It is a storm made of choices so quiet that they only echo when you listen deeply. Versions split, not with thunder, but with whispers. They don't announce themselves with fireworks or with cosmic explosions. They branch away like roots growing under soil, unseen but undeniable. You are used to thinking of yourself as a single thread, but threads are never alone. They fray, they separate, they twist into fibers, and fibers into strands. What you call you is only one fiber among thousands, each one just as real, each one walking away from the same central knot. The question isn't whether they exist, it is whether you've ever been just one. In science, there's a thought experiment often called the many worlds interpretation. Physicists proposed it, not as a dream, but as a solution. Instead of a universe collapsing into one outcome, it splits, every possible outcome unfolding in its own branch. Toss a coin, and in one branch it lands heads, in another it lands tails. Speak a sentence, and in one version it reshapes your future, while in another you remain silent and life takes a different turn. You aren't watching from a distance, you are living inside one of those branches. But what about the others? Where do those versions go? And if they are real, do they still hear you? The silence becomes heavier the longer you sit with it. Think of all the decisions you never noticed yourself making. The way your eyes glanced left instead of right when crossing the street. The way your mind settled on one word over another when speaking to a stranger. Each of those tiny ripples created another self, one who lives with the consequences you barely noticed passing by. They exist not in imagination but in a hidden geometry of time, where every silence holds an unspoken chorus. If you lean into the stillness, you almost hear them breathing with you, an orchestra of selves conducting music too delicate for most ears. But silence is deceptive. You've been taught to think it is emptiness, when in truth, it is a container for versions of you who are waiting. Waiting for what though? Not to merge, not to return, but to exist fully in their own paths. Imagine the first time you held back from confessing something important. Somewhere, another version of you spoke it out loud. Imagine the job you didn't take, the move you didn't make, the apology you never voiced. Each silence you kept is a word they said. Each restraint you carried is a leap they took. When you imagine them, you are not fantasizing, you are remembering from the edges of a shared route. This raises a troubling thought. If versions are splitting constantly, are you even in control of which one you are, or are you simply carried along by the branch you notice, while countless others unfold without your permission? The unsettling truth is that silence itself may be a form of choice, a choice you didn't even realize you made. To be this version of you is to inherit not just what you've done, but what you've failed to do. And those failures aren't lost, they are lived out somewhere else, by another you who didn't let silence win. Philosophy has long whispered about this. Kierkegaard spoke of anxiety as the dizziness of freedom, that unbearable weight of infinite choices pressing down at once. He described it as standing on the edge of a cliff, staring into possibilities so endless that they paralyze you. What if that dizziness is the faint awareness of your other selves? The versions that already jumped, the ones that stepped back, the ones still teetering at the edge. What if silence is not just absence, but the pressure of voices you can't quite hear, all calling from lives you didn't take? Notice how silence feels different depending on where you are. Alone in your room, it feels heavy, almost unbearable. Surrounded by people, silence feels different, like a secret resting between breaths. That's because silence is never just yours. It is shared with the versions of you who occupy nearby possibilities. The silence in a crowd is split among all the paths you could take in that moment. Speaking, walking, laughing, leaving. Each path has a you waiting to step forward, and when you hesitate, they're already moving. So what does this mean for you? Listening now, here in this moment. It means you are not only yourself, you are a member of a vast choir, even if your ears are trained to hear only one voice. The silence you feel now is a meeting place, a crossing point where versions of you gather, if only for a moment, before scattering again into directions you cannot follow. Each breath is an invitation to realize you are not one story, you are a library. And yet, for all this vastness, you still feel alone. Why? Because you cannot see them. You cannot reach across and shake hands with the version of you who turned left instead of right. You cannot sit across the table from the one who said yes instead of no. Silence hides them not because they are gone, but because they are so close they blur into your own reflection. Look in a mirror and ask, is the one staring back at you the same you, or is it just one of the versions, standing there in the silence, waiting for you to notice? As you settle into this thought, remember this: every pause, every hesitation, every moment of quiet you've mistaken for emptiness was never empty. It was a splitting, a branching, a birth of another self. You are always more than you think, and the silence proves it. Listen long enough, and you'll realize the truth. You are not one voice, but many, echoing in places you have never walked. Versions are splitting in silence, and one of them is listening with you now. Think about the very moment you pressed play on this video. A decision so small it felt invisible, yet even this created an echo. Somewhere else, another version of you scrolled past, distracted. Another decided to watch, but stopped halfway. Another never found this channel at all. And yet, each of those yous are just as real as the one sitting here now, listening carefully. That means the choice you feel unfolding isn't really unfolding. It's already happened in every possible way. The illusion of choice is not whether you will or won't, but which version of you is aware of the decision that has already been made. We live under the comforting story that the future is open, that we are walking toward a horizon where options stretch wide and unclaimed. But physics, philosophy, and even your own lived experience whisper a darker truth. The horizon has already been walked. Every path you might take is already stretched out, already alive, already occupied by some version of you. What you call free will may simply be the awareness of which version you inhabit in this moment. The real question isn't, what will you choose? It's, which choice are you waking up inside right now? Think of time not as a line, but as a field. In that field, all decisions already bloom at once. The you who confessed love too soon. The you who never confessed at all. The you who moved cities. The you who stayed. Their stories don't wait in the future. They are already unfolding, scattered like seeds across a ground you cannot see. When you walk forward, you are not planting new seeds. You are stepping into patches that were already growing long before you arrived. Each choice you think you make is simply the recognition of a self that was already waiting for you to notice it. This thought unsettles us, because it erases the comfort of agency. If every choice is already made, then what does it mean to be you? Are you just a passenger, strapped into the ride of a life that was determined long ago? Or are you the author, writing as you read, discovering words you feel you're creating, but were always already written? Philosophers like Nietzsche hinted at this with the idea of eternal recurrence, that every moment you live has already happened, is happening, and will happen again, endlessly. The terror of that idea is not repetition. It's the suspicion that you are not free, but simply retracing steps carved into the stone of existence. And yet, paradoxically, this view can be liberating. If every choice is already made, then regret itself becomes hollow. How can you regret what was never truly open? How can you feel guilt over a decision, if that decision was always waiting for you? Instead of torment, there can be peace. Your life, in this interpretation, is not a fragile glass you might shatter with a wrong move. It is a river flowing into every possible delta, and you are simply feeling the water of one current at a time. Let's make it concrete. Imagine you are offered two jobs. One promises stability, the other promises risk and adventure. You weigh your options. You agonize. You call friends for advice. Finally, you choose stability. You take the job. You move into the office. You build a life around it. But somewhere else, equally real, you didn't. That version of you took the risky offer, faced its storms, maybe failed, maybe flourished. The point is not which one is true. Both are true. The choice you agonized over was already made, twice, in both directions. The agony was not in deciding. It was in realizing you could only be aware of one branch at a time. Science fiction often plays with this idea, but so does neuroscience in a quieter way. Researchers have found that the brain registers a decision milliseconds before you consciously think you made it. That means even on the smallest scale, what you call choice is the awareness of a decision already taken. Your conscious mind is simply catching up, narrating a story around the path your body already stepped onto. Existence may work the same way on a grander scale, every choice already branching, every life already lived, and your awareness flickering across one version at a time like light across a film reel. So when you think back on your life, on the forks in the road, it isn't correct to say I could have been different. You are different, just not here. Those versions of you exist, breathing in silence, carrying the weight of choices you didn't feel but were still made. That is why déjà vu can feel uncanny, not just because you sense repetition, but because another you really did stand in this place, in another branch, and your awareness briefly brushed against theirs. You are not remembering the past. You are brushing against a choice already made elsewhere. This reframes identity itself. If every version of you exists, then you are not singular. You are plural by design, a constellation of selves orbiting around a center you cannot see. You are not just the story of your choices. You are the archive of every possible choice already written into existence. The self you cling to is only a page in a book far larger than you could hold. Each I you say is one voice in a choir that has always been singing, even before you learned the first note. Of course, this thought can leave you with unease. If choices are already made, then what is the point of effort? Why try if success and failure are both already written? But listen carefully. Effort is still part of the script. The you who tries is already real, just as the you who surrenders is real. What you feel as struggle, hope, ambition, despair, these are not illusions. They are the textures of the branch you occupy. To say choices are already made does not mean life is empty. It means it is full beyond measure, every outcome spilling over with versions of you that could never be erased. So when you pause tonight, after this section ends, remember this: you are not choosing whether to stop or to continue. Both have already been done. You are simply discovering which version of you lingers here with me, listening to the silence where choices breathe. And in that recognition lies the deepest paradox. You are free and not free, bound and unbound, singular and infinite, all at once. Every choice already made, every you already alive. And still, you sit here, as if for the first time, listening to words that another version of you has already heard. When you walk down a street at night, have you ever noticed the way your shadow stretches out beside you? Never quite separate, but never quite the same. It moves when you move, it stops when you stop, but it never feels alive in the same way you do. Still, there's a strangeness to it. The shadow isn't merely absence. It's an outline of possibility. A darker version of you, silent but present, keeping pace with every step. Now imagine that those shadows are not just tricks of light, but real presences, versions of you that never quite faded, walking quietly beside you, invisible, except for the faintest sense that you are never entirely alone. These shadows are not ghosts from outside. They are echoes of your own life. Every time you chose one path, another self took the other, and their presence lingers like a faint outline against your own. When you feel déjà vu, when you sense a strange familiarity in a place you've never been, that might not be a glitch in memory at all. It could be the brushing of a shadow self, a nearby version of you who walked this street in their own thread of reality, and whose footsteps you now sense, even if you cannot hear them. Think about the moments when you've stopped suddenly, looking over your shoulder as though someone were following you. The street is empty, the room is still, but your body reacts with certainty that something is there. Evolutionary psychology might explain it as instinct, a leftover survival mechanism, but there's another interpretation. What if you really are sensing someone? Not a stranger, not an intruder, but another version of yourself, moving close enough to leave a trace. A shadow you cannot touch, yet one that still bends the air you breathe. In philosophy, there is an old idea called the double. Writers like Dostoevsky and Borges explored it as the uncanny arrival of a second self. Sometimes the double appeared as a rival, sometimes as a reflection, sometimes as a haunting, but in every telling, the message was the same. You are not alone in being you. The shadow self lingers, waiting, whispering, pacing. It is not a metaphor but a possibility. The you who lived differently, who carries memories you do not share, still walks, still breathes, still leans against the walls of existence. Now imagine walking into a crowd. Every face you pass belongs to someone else. Yet you can't shake the feeling that one pair of eyes looked at you too long. Maybe you brushed shoulders with someone whose presence felt more like recognition than chance. What if those encounters are not coincidences? What if, among the strangers, you sometimes cross paths with versions of yourself, shadows disguised as others, glancing back at you for the briefest instant before vanishing into the flow of people? Each crowd might be denser than you think, filled not just with others but with countless yous keeping pace in different branches of the same unfolding street. There is comfort and unease in this thought. Comfort, because you are never truly alone. No matter how dark the night, no matter how silent the room, there is always another you walking quietly beside you. Unease, because you cannot know what they carry. Did they make the choices you feared? Did they speak the words you held back? Are they stronger, weaker, happier, lonelier? And if they are, what does that make you? Shadows remind us that identity is not a solid structure, but a fluid one, shifting depending on where you stand, who you became, and who you might still be. Science, too, brushes against this idea. In quantum theory, particles exist in overlapping states until observed. They are possibilities layered together, shadows of outcomes, until reality forces them into one version. Perhaps you are the same. Each decision collapses one version of you into visibility, leaving the others behind as shadows. But just because you don't see them, doesn't mean they don't exist. They are walking beside you in silence, unseen yet unavoidable, shaping the way the present feels heavier than it should. Think back to a time you nearly died. A near miss on the road, an illness that might have ended differently, a choice that could have led you into danger. You survived. But what about the version of you who didn't? That shadow still walks, carrying the weight of that ending. And though you cannot see them, you sometimes feel them. The chill down your spine, the heaviness of a memory that isn't entirely yours. Shadows do not disappear because you survived. They remain, reminders that death itself branches into versions too. But not all shadows are tragic. Sometimes they are playful, even reassuring. Think of the way children interact with their shadows, running, chasing, laughing, as if they are playing with another companion. Maybe children are closer to the truth than adults dare to believe. They sense the presence of versions before skepticism closes the door. To a child, a shadow is alive because it is. To an adult, a shadow is dismissed as absence, because we've forgotten that not everything unseen is unreal. And so you walk through life, always in the company of shadows. Sometimes they fall neatly beside you. Sometimes they stretch out ahead. Sometimes they linger behind. You may try to ignore them, but deep down you know they're there. When you catch yourself speaking in an empty room, when you whisper words no one hears, who are you talking to? Perhaps to the shadows, perhaps to yourself. But which self? The one in this moment, or the one just a breath away, walking beside you, unseen but present? Tonight, as you sit with these thoughts, notice the quiet. Notice how the room doesn't feel as empty as you once assumed. Notice how your own body feels heavier, as if pressed against by someone unseen. That is the nature of shadows. They do not vanish when the light goes out. They gather, thickening, reminding you that you are never one alone. Every step you take is doubled. Every silence is shared. Every breath you breathe is mirrored by another you. Still walking, still alive, still moving beside you in silence. Shadows walking beside you. Always. Every life is filled with crossroads. Those moments where you thought a door had slammed shut, where you told yourself that path is gone forever. But what if no path ever truly closed? What if every road you almost took is still being walked, not by strangers but by you, versions of you who stepped forward where you hesitated, who turned left instead of right, who dared where you pulled back? The paths you thought were dead ends never actually died. They are alive somewhere, threaded with footsteps, echoing with decisions that still breathe. Picture a forest where every trail splits into 2, then 4, then 10. As you walk, you can only choose one direction, and the others vanish from view. But what if they didn't vanish? What if, as you moved forward, the other trails continued as well, each one carrying another version of you deeper into the woods? From your perspective, you only see one line, but from above, from outside of time, The forest is glowing with countless versions of you walking endless trails, none of them abandoned, none of them lost. This reframes memory itself. When you look back, you remember the path you walked, the choices you carried, but the mind also whispers about the roads you didn't take, the faces you could have loved, the work you might have done, the risks you didn't embrace. Nostalgia, regret, longing. They feel like emotions, but they may also be signals. Signals from versions of you who are still walking those other paths. Their lives may press against your awareness like echoes through the walls of time. You think you're imagining what might have been, but you might be brushing against what still is, just beyond your reach. Philosophers often asked about possibility. Does a choice that was never taken still exist in some sense? Aristotle thought of potentiality as something waiting to be actualized, like a seed that could bloom but hasn't. Modern physics, however, suggests something far stranger. Every potential is actualized, just not here, not now, not in the version of reality you're inhabiting. That means you never killed a possibility. It simply grew somewhere else, into a life just as real as yours. When you think of all the what-ifs that haunt you, imagine them not as ghosts but as living cities of selves, still awake, still moving, still alive. Think of the first time you stood at a door and didn't knock. The first time you saw someone's face and didn't speak. The first time you dreamed of leaving but stayed. Each of those moments carved paths that in this reality seemed to close, yet they didn't close. They continued. Another you knocked, another you spoke, another you left. That means you live in a strange paradox. You are both the one who missed the chance and the one who took it. You are both the silence and the voice, both the wanderer and the rooted one. This is why certain memories sting so sharply. Regret feels heavier than simple disappointment, because you are not only mourning what didn't happen, you are sensing what is happening elsewhere. Somewhere, that version of you is still in motion, still alive inside the choice you thought you lost. You are connected to them, even if only faintly. When you wake at night thinking about what could have been, you are not fantasizing, you are overhearing another life, one you are still tied to in ways you cannot explain. Imagine standing at a river crossing. In your version, you stepped onto the bridge and walked across. But in another version, you stayed on the far side. In another, you jumped into the water and swam. In another, you turned around and never crossed at all. Each choice opened a path, and none of those paths ever closed. They continue forever, stretching into futures you cannot see. You only notice the one you inhabit, but the others are not erased. They are simply invisible from where you stand. Psychology gives us hints of this in the way the brain simulates possibilities. Every time you consider a decision, your mind rehearses scenarios as though they were real. Studies have shown that imagining an event lights up many of the same brain regions as actually living it. Could it be that the brain is not merely pretending, but glimpsing, that in imagining what if you were brushing against versions of you who actually lived it, and whose presence lingers as thought? If so, then even your daydreams are not fiction. They are the briefest meetings with selves who walked paths you thought had ended. Now, consider the weight of this realization. If no path ever truly closes, then nothing is wasted. Not time, not effort, not opportunity. Every door you missed was opened elsewhere. Every silence you kept was spoken elsewhere. Every risk you avoided was embraced elsewhere. You are not a single fragile thread constantly at risk of breaking. You are a network, a lattice of lives weaving endlessly into futures. That means your story is never one line of successes and failures. It is an entire map of outcomes, each one valid, each one lived, each one unfolding even as you sit here listening. But with that comfort comes unease. If nothing ever closes, then what does it mean to live this life, right here? Does it make your effort meaningless? If other versions of you are already doing everything you might have done, or does it mean your effort is sacred, because it is the version you are awake inside? To breathe, to speak, to walk this path, knowing it is only one among many, is to recognize the beauty of limits. You cannot live them all, but you can live this one, and in doing so you become the witness to a branch of reality no one else can experience. Tonight, as you let these words settle, think of the choices that haunt you most. Think of the doors you thought had closed forever, and now, let yourself imagine that they never closed at all. Somewhere, those doors are open. Somewhere, those paths are alive. Somewhere, versions of you are still walking, still breathing, still shaping lives you will never see but will always feel. You are not cut off from them. You are connected, woven into their stories by threads you may never untangle. No path ever closed. They are all still alive, just waiting in silence, just beyond the edge of your sight. There is an unsettling moment we all share, standing in front of a mirror, staring into our own reflection, and suddenly feeling as though the person looking back isn't entirely us. It blinks when we blink. It shifts when we shift. But deep down it doesn't feel like a perfect copy. It feels like something else. Something aware, as if the mirror doesn't just reflect. It answers. And what if it truly does? What if every time you looked into a mirror, you weren't only seeing yourself in this branch of reality, but glimpsing another version of you staring back, across the divide, just as curious, just as uncertain, just as alive. Mirrors are portals of recognition, but they may also be windows into versions of you who didn't make the same choices. Imagine standing at your bathroom sink, staring at your reflection after a long day. You think of the things you could have said, the things you didn't do, the versions of life that slipped through your hands. What if the reflection staring back already lived those versions? What if the mirror answers not with your own face, but with theirs, reminding you that paths never taken still exist, alive behind the glass? The unsettling part is that mirrors don't argue. They don't speak, they don't contradict you, and yet they always respond. You look, and they look back. You lean forward, and they lean too. The symmetry feels comforting until you remember real life is rarely symmetrical. How often have you felt off balance, uncertain, flawed? Yet the mirror version never shows hesitation. It moves flawlessly, a perfect echo, and that perfection carries a secret. It suggests that somewhere, a version of you does live with balance, with certainty, with clarity, not you here, but you there, across the glass. Children sometimes play with mirrors, longer than adults. They make faces, they laugh, they wave. They see the reflection as a companion, not as a reflection. Maybe children intuitively know something. Adults forget that the face in the mirror isn't just you, it's another presence entirely. Over time we dull that awareness, reducing it to just physics, just light. But the strangeness lingers, that tug in your stomach when you catch your reflection moving in dim light. That eerie pause when you don't quite recognize yourself, as though the mirror blinked a fraction too late. These are not malfunctions. They are reminders that the mirror is not just a wall, it is a conversation. And it is here right now that I'll pause to ask you something simple. Because versions of you may be watching from countless places, but only one is awake in this moment, listening. Where are you right now? And what time is it where you are? Speak it softly, or think it in silence. Notice how the room feels heavier after you answer. Because in another branch, a version of you answered differently, in another time zone, in another space, and yet the mirror heard them too. The history of mirrors in human culture has always carried this suspicion. Ancient people believed mirrors trapped souls, or revealed truths hidden from the naked eye. Some feared breaking one not for superstition, but for the possibility that it fractured the link to another self, scattering their reflection across shattered surfaces. Even now, mirrors carry unease. Think of horror stories where the reflection doesn't quite match the person in front of it. Why does that image terrify us? Because deep down we suspect it could be true that the mirror reflects not one version, but many, and sometimes another self slips through, staring back when it shouldn't. Neuroscience even hints at this strangeness. There is a phenomenon called the mirror illusion, where staring at your own face in low light long enough causes distortions. People report seeing other faces, unfamiliar expressions, even figures that don't belong to them. Science calls it a trick of perception, the brain confusing itself in repetition. But what if it isn't confusion? What if those strange faces are not illusions at all, but glimpses of other selves staring back, versions of you who lived differently, pressing faintly against the thin glass divide? Now consider how often we use mirrors in daily life, without thinking. Every glance before leaving the house, every pause in a shop window, every faint reflection in a phone screen. Each one is a silent meeting with another you. The more you look, the more you sense it. They are not only reflecting, they are watching, and if they are watching, then they are aware of you, just as you are of them. Each reflection is not the end of light bouncing back, it is the beginning of another presence leaning in to acknowledge that you are not alone. But here's the paradox. The mirror never initiates. It waits. It answers only when you look. Which raises the question, if you never glance into a mirror, does that version of you remain unseen, waiting endlessly on the other side? How many reflections sit in silence, waiting for the moment you finally return? And what does it mean for the versions of you who are staring at mirrors right now in their own branches, hoping to catch your attention? Tonight, if you dare, sit in front of a mirror and stare, not for seconds, but for minutes. Watch how your reflection begins to blur, how your own eyes seem both familiar and foreign. Notice the subtle delays, the faint wrongness, and ask yourself, is that really me, or is that another me? Answering in silence, trying to remind me that every version of myself is alive, reflected in countless surfaces, waiting for acknowledgement. The mirror answers. Always. The only question is whether you are willing to listen. Picture your life as a tower. Each day is a stone, each year is a layer, and you believe the structure is simple. One life stacked neatly, rising from birth to wherever you stand now. But what if that tower is not singular? What if every possible life you could have lived is also stacked, pressed against one another, forming not one column but an entire skyline of selves, crowded, towering, endless? You think you are living one life, but you are living on the surface of many. Each moment you stand upon is supported by countless other versions of you, each one building their own tower, each one pressing against yours in silence. From this perspective, existence is not linear but architectural. Imagine walking through a city of towers, each one belonging to you, each rising from the same foundation but branching into its own skyline. Somewhere there is a taller tower, belonging to the version of you who risked more, who endured more, who kept climbing when you stopped. Somewhere there is a shorter tower, belonging to the version who broke early, who surrendered when you pushed forward. And somewhere in between there are thousands more, each one still rising, each one still alive, stacked on top of decisions you can't even remember making. This way of seeing yourself is both humbling and terrifying. You are not standing alone, you are pressed among versions of you who occupy realities you cannot visit but can sometimes sense, that feeling of déjà vu. Perhaps it is not memory, but the faint pressure of another tower brushing against yours, the echo of footsteps climbing stairs you never walked, the uncanny familiarity of a dream. Perhaps it is not imagination, but the window of another life flashing briefly open, giving you a glimpse of the view from a different tower. Think of all the ways we describe time, building on the past, carrying the weight of history, standing on the shoulders of who I used to be. These metaphors are more accurate than we realize. You are indeed standing on shoulders, but not only your own. You are standing on the stacked lives of other versions, each supporting you invisibly. When you feel the strange heaviness of life, it may be the weight of all those other selves pressing against you, holding their own stones, building their own towers. You are not heavy because of what you carry. You are heavy because of what you all carry together. Philosophy circles this idea when it speaks of identity as layered. Think of Locke's notion of continuity, that who you are depends on memory stacking upon memory. Yet, memory is flawed, incomplete, fragile. What happens when your memory fails? Are you less yourself? Not if lives are stacked. Because even the forgotten moments exist elsewhere in another version's tower, intact and unbroken. This means you are never missing pieces. They are simply held by another you waiting in silence. Now imagine the most important choices of your life. The partner you chose or didn't choose. The city you moved to or stayed away from. The apology you made or kept hidden. Each of those choices laid a new stone in your tower. But simultaneously, each opposite choice laid a stone in another tower too. None of those towers vanish. They rise together, pressing shoulder to shoulder, forming a skyline of possibilities. Which means your life is not only what you see from the window of your tower. It is part of a horizon of countless other lives, each equally yours. This thought changes how we see regret. Regret feels like a crack in the stone, a flaw in the structure. But if lives are stacked endlessly, regret is not a flaw, it is a signal. It's your awareness brushing against another tower, one built with the opposite choice. You ache not because something was lost, but because you can faintly sense the sturdiness of another version's tower, standing strong where yours faltered. Regret is not emptiness, it is connection. Science too plays with this architecture. In string theory, some physicists imagine dimensions folded on top of one another, stacked so closely we cannot separate them, but still pressing, still real. In psychology we see layers in memory and personality, hidden beneath the conscious surface. Jung spoke of the collective unconscious as a stack of symbols we all share. But what if the unconscious is not collective but personal, your own lives stacked together, leaking into each other, whispering across cracks you can barely hear? Think of dreams again. You dream of houses you've never entered, of streets you've never walked, of lives you've never lived. Science calls them constructions of the brain, but what if they are visits? Not to imagination, but to the rooms of towers that belong to other versions of you. standing side by side, stacked so closely that your dreams slip across the thin walls separating them. You wake thinking that was strange, but it was not strange, it was a glimpse of another window in another life. And so your identity changes shape. You are not one tower rising alone, nor one life stacking neatly into the sky. You are many. You are a skyline of selves, each one reaching upward, each one carrying weight, each one supporting the horizon of who you might be. The loneliness you sometimes feel is not because you are isolated, but because you have forgotten the skyline, forgotten that there are countless other yous, living lives as real as this one, stacked in silence, pressing invisibly against your own. Tonight, imagine this. You are standing at the top of your tower. You look out, and in the distance you see, not emptiness, but a city glowing with light. Each tower belongs to you. Each window is a version of your eyes. Each rooftop is a version of your breath. And though you cannot climb into them, you know they are there. Live stacked on each other, endlessly, silently, forever. Every decision you make feels like a small stone dropped into the river of your life. Some stones are heavy. You remember where they fell. You feel the ripples every day. Others are so small, you forget them almost instantly. Yet memory does not measure importance the way reality does. Many of the choices you forgot still carried consequences, rippling quietly outward into paths you never realized you shaped. The strangest part is this: forgetting doesn't erase them. Those decisions still live, still echo, still carve versions of you that walk paths your conscious mind abandoned. They are echoes from forgotten decisions, still alive in silence. Think about the last time you hesitated, then acted without thinking. Maybe you said yes to a plan. Maybe you turned left instead of right. Maybe you clicked on a link you can't even recall. At the time, it felt trivial, so unimportant you didn't even commit it to memory. But for another version of you, that moment was monumental. That yes led to an entirely new relationship. That left turn led to an entirely new encounter. That click opened a doorway into an entirely new world. For you, it's forgotten. For them, it's destiny. This is why memories feel incomplete. They are not merely imperfect recordings. They are partial access. What you call your memory is one thread of awareness, while countless other decisions slip into other threads. Sometimes they press back against you. You wake in the middle of the night thinking about a person you haven't seen in years, not because they matter in this version, but because another version of you is still close to them, still living inside the decision to stay instead of leave. Their presence leaks through like an echo. Philosophy has long wrestled with the weight of forgotten choices. Kierkegaard called life a forward motion, understood only backward. But even backward, you don't see it all. You remember the grand gestures, but the subtle ones slip away. And yet, the subtle ones may have been the true architects of your life. The coffee you spilled that made you late. The word you spoke casually that shifted someone else's perception. The job you almost declined but didn't. Forgotten decisions are not small, they are simply hidden. They live in versions of you that still carry their weight. Neuroscience confirms how fragile memory really is. Studies show that every time you recall an event, you alter it slightly, overwriting the original with a new version. Your brain is not an archive, but a painter, repainting the past each time you look. That means some choices may already be lost to you completely, but lost is not gone. They exist intact in other versions, preserved in lives where those forgotten moments shaped the future with clarity you no longer hold. The echoes you feel are not mistakes in your brain. They are connections to versions that still remember. Consider the eerie pull of déjà vu. You walk into a room for the first time, yet it feels familiar. Science might call it a misfire of memory. But what if it is not? What if it is the echo of a forgotten decision? Maybe in another version, you did walk into this room before, months ago, years ago, a lifetime ago, and your awareness brushes against their memory, leaving you convinced you've been here before, because somewhere you truly have. Forgotten decisions also haunt in dreams. Think of those strange scenarios that feel too specific to be random. You dream of people you don't know, places you've never been, lives you've never lived, yet they carry an uncanny realism, a texture too sharp to be mere fantasy. Perhaps those dreams are not fiction at all, but the echoes of decisions you forgot, paths your awareness abandoned, but another you still walks. When you dream of a city you've never visited, maybe it isn't imagination. Maybe it's memory leaking from the tower of another self, still alive in that forgotten choice. This means regret is incomplete. You regret the choices you remember, the ones that feel monumental, But the choices you forgot may also haunt you in subtler ways. That faint dissatisfaction you can't explain, that strange sense of being out of place, may not come from here. It may be the echo of another version, who remembers what you forgot. Their decisions still ring through the fabric of identity, reminding you that you are more than the story you recall. But this isn't only haunting, it can be freeing. If forgotten decisions still echo, then you are never defined solely by what you remember. You are larger than your story, greater than your conscious thread. That means your identity isn't as fragile as you fear. Even if you forget, even if memory fails, the choices you made are still alive, carried by versions of you who remember them perfectly. You are not a broken archive. You are a vast network where nothing is lost, only relocated. Imagine walking through a vast hall filled with voices. Each voice belongs to a version of you, each one speaking lines from choices you forgot. Some are whispers, some are shouts, some are laughter, some are cries. At first it feels overwhelming, but then you realize, this hall is you. You are the sum of every decision, remembered and forgotten, echoing in harmony and dissonance alike. When you feel that uncanny sense of being more than yourself, it's because you are. You are not one voice. You are a chorus of echoes, each carrying pieces of forgotten lives. So tonight, when you close your eyes, think about all the little choices you forgot, the ones you never wrote down, the ones you never told anyone, the ones you thought evaporated into nothing. Know that they didn't vanish. They live on, carried by other versions of you, still walking, still choosing, still remembering. And when you feel a strange tug of déjà vu, or a dream too vivid to dismiss, or a memory you can't place, pause and listen. That is an echo from forgotten decisions, reminding you that every choice lives forever, even if you can't recall it. Imagine walking through your house late at night. The rooms are familiar, the air is quiet, and yet something feels different. Out of the corner of your eye, you sense movement, something waiting just beyond your vision. You turn your head, and nothing is there. But the feeling lingers, something is hiding in the corner, silent, patient, unblinking. Now take that sensation, and stretch it across your entire life. Futures are waiting in corners everywhere you go, unseen but present. Possibilities crouch just out of sight. They are not gone, not erased. They are simply waiting for you to look their way. We like to imagine the future as a wide road, stretching in front of us. But in truth, the future is a room filled with corners. Each corner hides a version of your life, already alive, already moving, already breathing, just beyond the reach of your current awareness. When you finally turn, when you finally step into that hidden space, you don't create the future, you discover it. The corner doesn't open because of you. It was always there, waiting for you to notice. This is why moments of sudden change feel so uncanny. You think your life is stable, predictable, unfolding along one path, and then, in an instant, it shifts. You meet someone you never expected. You receive news that changes everything. You take a turn that alters the entire course of your days. These are not accidents. These are futures stepping out from the corners, revealing themselves at last. You didn't invent them. They were crouched there all along, patient, silent, waiting for the moment you finally arrived. Think about the times you've had an inexplicable sense that something was about to happen. You didn't know what, but you felt it. A heaviness in the air, a pull in your chest, a certainty with no evidence. Science calls it intuition, the brain processing subtle cues you don't consciously recognize. But what if intuition is something else? What if it's the faint awareness of futures in the corners, brushing against your mind, whispering their presence before they step fully into view? You're not predicting, you're overhearing. Philosophy has long struggled with the tension between free will and fate. If the future is already written, where does choice belong? If it is unwritten, how can we sense it so clearly? The idea of futures waiting in corners dissolves this conflict. The future is neither written nor blank. It is plural. Every possibility already exists, waiting just beyond the edges of your sight. When you turn toward one, it steps forward. When you ignore another, it doesn't vanish. It simply stays in its corner, continuing without you, carried by another version of yourself who did look, who did turn, who did step forward. This is why certain regrets feel so heavy. You don't only mourn what didn't happen. You feel the weight of the future that waited in the corner, the one you sensed but never entered. That heaviness is not absence. It is presence. You feel it because the future you abandoned still exists, alive in another room, inhabited by another self who took the step you didn't. The corner you ignored was simply a doorway you didn't walk through, but someone else did. Neuroscience offers us a strange clue here. When you imagine the future, your brain activates many of the same networks it uses to remember the past. To your mind, thinking of what might happen feels almost identical to recalling what already has. What if this isn't coincidence? What if imagining the future is not invention, but recollection, not memory of the past, but memory of futures already alive, waiting in corners you have yet to enter? That's why daydreams feel so vivid. They are not creations, they are glimpses of hidden rooms already occupied by versions of you. Think of dreams again, those strange narratives where futures arrive without warning. In dreams you are older, living in places you don't know, speaking words you don't remember learning. Some dismiss this as random neural activity. But what if dreams are visits? What if, while asleep, you wander into the corners of futures not yet lived here, brushing against versions of you who have already stepped into them? The strangeness of dreams is not randomness. It is recognition, your awareness temporarily slipping into another room where another you is already alive. This reframes the very way you move through daily life. Every street you walk, every room you enter, every conversation you begin, each is lined with corners, each holding futures you cannot yet see. Some of them you will turn toward, others you will ignore. But whether you look or not, they wait. They do not vanish when you walk past. They remain alive, carried by versions of you who lingered, who turned, who entered the corners you never did. Imagine your life as a vast house, one you've been living in without exploring fully. You know the main hallways, the rooms you frequent, the places you feel comfortable, but in every shadowy edge, in every unopened door, in every dim corner, futures are waiting. They are patient, they do not shout, they do not demand, they simply wait, knowing that one day some version of you will look their way, and when they do, that future will rise, not as something new but as something inevitable, something already alive. Tonight, as you sit with these words, look around your own room. Notice the corners. Notice how they feel heavier, how they draw your eyes even when you try not to look. Maybe you think it's just imagination, just the brain filling space with shadows, but maybe not. Maybe each corner holds a life you haven't yet lived, a path you haven't yet walked, a self you haven't yet met. They are not gone. They are waiting, silently, patiently, for the moment you finally turn your head. Futures waiting in corners, always. Imagine walking into a room where every chair is occupied, every corner crowded, every space already taken. At first, you expect strangers, unfamiliar faces, but then you realize something impossible. Every person in that room is you. Some look older, some younger, some are weary, some are laughing, some carry regrets etched into their faces. Others shine with possibilities you never realized were yours. This isn't imagination. It is the architecture of existence. Every decision you've made, every path you could have taken, every version of you that branched away now fills the room. You are not singular. You are a gathering. This image is unsettling because it challenges the one thing you cling to most, the belief that you are unique. Identity feels sacred, solid, unbroken. Yet in this room, that illusion collapses. You see yourself multiplied endlessly, each one equally real, each one carrying choices you didn't make. You are not the only you. You are one among many, a single note in a symphony that has been playing far longer than you imagined. Philosophy has circled this fear for centuries. Sartre wrote of the gaze, the uncomfortable feeling of being seen by others, as though their presence defines you. But what if the gaze that unsettles you is not from others, but from other versions of you? The discomfort you feel when looking in a mirror, the shiver when entering a crowded space, may come not from strangers, but from the silent awareness that somewhere, versions of you are already there, watching, listening, existing. The room is filled with you, even if your eyes are too trained on the singular to see the plural. Think about dreams where you interact with yourself. Maybe you've dreamt of meeting another you, a double, a figure who looked like you but spoke differently, lived differently, carried a life unfamiliar to you. Most dismiss these dreams as symbolic, but what if they are more? What if dreams are the only time the doors between these rooms crack open, allowing you to step briefly into the gathering? The uncanny familiarity of seeing yourself in dreams is not imagination, it is recognition. Now, picture your daily life. Every room you enter feels ordinary. You step into the kitchen, the office, the bedroom. But what if each of these rooms contains more than meets the eye? What if layered invisibly within them are versions of you who entered under different circumstances, who made different choices at the threshold? Somewhere in the kitchen, another you is cooking a meal you never learned to make. Somewhere in the office, another you is sitting at a desk you never claimed. Somewhere in the bedroom, another you is resting with someone you never met. Each room is filled with you, but only one version is visible at a time. This explains the strange heaviness some spaces carry. You walk into a room and feel a presence, as though someone just left, as though the air is thick with unspoken words. Science calls it psychology, the residue of memory and association. But what if it's more? What if what you feel is not the weight of memory, but the density of selves? The air feels crowded, because it is crowded. The room is not empty, it is filled with countless versions of you, layered invisibly on top of one another. Physics offers a strange parallel. In quantum theory, particles can exist in multiple states at once, overlapping until observed. What you call reality may be just one observation among many. That means the room you occupy is not singular. It is a superposition of countless rooms, each one alive with a version of you. You collapse into one version, but the others do not vanish. They continue, unseen yet real, filling the space with lives you cannot perceive, but can sometimes sense. Think about memory again. When you return to a childhood home, why does it feel so alive, even if it is empty? Because in some sense, it is not empty at all. It is filled with versions of you who still live there, still play in those rooms, still carry the weight of forgotten decisions. You feel their presence not as nostalgia, but as reality pressing against yours. The room is filled with you, past and present, remembered and forgotten, seen and unseen. And what about the future? Imagine stepping into a room you've never been in before. A hotel lobby, a stranger's house, a classroom on the first day. The space feels new, but even here, you are not alone. Futures fill the corners, versions of you who will one day stand there, who will one day live moments you haven't yet reached. The room is already filled with them, waiting. You sense it faintly, the echo of something you haven't lived yet, but will. The room is filled with you, not just in the present, but across every time you will ever inhabit it. This realization is both terrifying and comforting. Terrifying because you are never truly alone. Comforting because you are never truly alone. When you feel lost, when you feel fractured, when you feel like your identity is too fragile to carry you, remember, you are not a single thread trying to hold everything together. You are a gathering, a multitude, a room already filled with countless versions of you. The weight you feel is not only yours, it is shared among all the selves who stand with you, even if you cannot see them. Tonight, pause for a moment. Look around the room you sit in now. Notice the corners, the shadows, the air. Imagine them occupied, not by strangers, but by you. Each chair filled, each corner occupied, each breath mirrored by another self. Some are smiling, some are silent, some are broken, some are whole. They are all you, they are all here. The room is filled with you, and it always will be. You've been taught to think of time as a straight line, past behind you, present underfoot, future ahead. But that line is a story, not a truth. In reality, time folds. It bends, it loops, it layers, and when it folds, it does not only carry events with it, it carries you. Your identity is not stretched neatly across a single thread. It is pressed into folds of time, overlapping, intersecting, repeating, multiplying. Who you are is not one self moving forward, but many selves scattered across folds of reality, each alive in their own curvature of time. Imagine holding a sheet of paper. On it, you draw a dot. This is you, right now. Then you fold the paper, bringing distant parts closer together. Suddenly, other dots that were once far away now press against yours. That is time folding. The past, the future, the choices you never made, the versions you never met, they are not miles away. They are folded against you. Sometimes you feel them pressing, like weight on your chest, like echoes you can't explain. That heaviness is not memory or imagination. It is contact. You brushing against another you, folded close in time. This explains the strange way memory works. Why do certain moments from years ago feel closer than what happened yesterday? Why does a childhood scene flood your mind with more intensity than the conversation you had last week? Because the folds of time are uneven. Some moments lie flat, distant, unremarkable. Others fold tightly, pressing against your present, whispering with the weight of their closeness. That is why you wake at night, remembering a decision you made 10 years ago, as if it just happened. The fold is still touching you. The version of you who made that choice is still alive in that crease, still pressing against your identity. Philosophy has always flirted with this. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence imagined time as a circle, endlessly repeating. Heidegger described being as entangled with temporality itself. But folding is different. It is not repetition, and it is not a cycle. It is simultaneity. All moments exist together, but some are folded near, some are stretched far. Your identity is not a single traveler moving forward, but a constellation of selves scattered across these folds, each alive, each pressing against one another. When you feel déjà vu, when you feel nostalgia, when you sense futures not yet lived, it is the folds brushing together, your awareness caught in the press of multiple selves at once. Think of the uncanny experience of time slowing down during crisis. You fall, you crash, you hear the news that changes everything. Seconds stretch into eternity. Later, you tell yourself it was adrenaline, the brain's chemistry altering perception. But what if it was more? What if, in that moment, time folded so tightly that multiple versions of you were pressed together, each one living the moment in slightly different ways, overlapping, colliding, echoing? You didn't imagine time slowing. You experienced the press of selves in folded time. This also reframes the future. You think the future is far away, unreachable, waiting for you, but in folds, some futures are pressed close, already brushing against your present. That's why you sometimes sense things before they happen, why you feel the pull of inevitability. It isn't prophecy, it is proximity. The fold has already pressed that future against you, and you are simply sensing the touch. Not all futures are near, but some are, and their presence leaks through, shaping your awareness before they arrive. Neuroscience gives a hint here too. Experiments show the brain often predicts milliseconds into the future, preparing actions before consciousness catches up. That is a small fold, the immediate future pressing into the present. Scale it larger, and the same principle applies. You are always living in folds, your awareness lagging behind slightly, narrating one layer while others already touch. Consciousness is not a traveler, it is an interpreter, reading the creases of folded time, trying to stitch them into a single story called you. Identity, then, is not fixed. It is not a continuous line from childhood to now. It is fragmented, layered, folded. You exist as multiple selves scattered across time, all alive, all real, all pressing against one another. The you listening here is only one fold's awareness. Other folds carry different yous, older, younger, stronger, broken, fulfilled, forgotten. When you feel dissonance within yourself, when you feel contradictions you cannot reconcile, it may not be psychological conflict at all. It may be temporal conflict. Folds pressing together, identities colliding across time, reminding you that you are not one story but many. Now imagine your life not as a line, but as an origami figure. Each fold creates a new angle, a new perspective, a new version of you. At the end, the paper is no longer flat. It is a shape, intricate and unique, made not of one surface but of countless folds. That is you. The shape you call identity is not one self. It is the pattern created by countless folds of time, each one carrying versions of you who never disappeared. This thought can feel overwhelming. How can you be so many and still be you? But the paradox is the point. You are not reducible to one line, one story, one version. You are vast. You are layered. You are folded. And when you feel the strangeness of time, the slippage of memory, the weight of nostalgia, the pull of futures not yet lived, you are not malfunctioning. You are sensing the folds. You are brushing against the selves pressed close, living alongside you in silence. Tonight, close your eyes and imagine your life as paper in your hands. Fold it once, and the past touches the present. Fold it again, and the future brushes against now. Keep folding, and you begin to see it. Identity is not a dot on a line. It is an entire shape, intricate, endless, alive. You are not one. You are many, scattered across folds of time, all pressing together, all real. Time folds around identity, and identity is nothing more than the shape those folds create. Every morning, you glance at your reflection and recognize the face staring back. It is yours, familiar, reliable, the anchor of your identity. But what about the faces you never became? The versions of you shaped by choices you didn't make, lives you didn't live, and futures you didn't walk into. They are not gone. They exist in silence, carried by other versions of yourself, scattered across reality, and sometimes, faintly, you sense them, like ghosts in the bone structure of your own face, like whispers in the mirror reminding you of identities you never wore, but still belong to you. Think about how much of who you are is determined by small things. The food you ate as a child, the friends you stumbled into at school, the words your parents spoke in moments they thought you weren't listening. Change just one thread, and your entire appearance would shift. Another hairstyle, another scar, another set of lines carved by different laughter or different grief. Those faces exist not as imagination but as reality, alive in other versions. You are not one face. You are thousands scattered across the choices you made and the choices you abandoned. This is why you sometimes don't recognize yourself in photos. You look at an image from years ago and think, that doesn't even look like me. It isn't just age or change or perspective. It is distance. That face belonged to another version of you who has since drifted into a different branch of existence. You remember fragments, but the full self who wore that face continues elsewhere. You are connected, but you are not the same. The dissonance you feel is not nostalgia. It is recognition of another you. Philosophy has long played with this unease. Hume argued that identity is nothing more than a bundle of perceptions stitched together, constantly shifting. If that is true, then faces are just as unstable. Each expression, each glance, each wrinkle is a temporary mask, one of countless masks you could have worn. The ones you didn't wear are not lost. They belong to versions of you living other lives. When you look into a crowd and think you see someone who looks like you, perhaps you are not mistaken. Perhaps you have brushed against one of the faces you never became. Dreams deepen this suspicion. Have you ever dreamt of being someone else, only to realize halfway through that it was still you? Your hands looked different, your body unfamiliar, your reflection unrecognizable, but inside you knew it was yours. Science calls it distortion of self-image during sleep. But what if it is not distortion? What if dreams open cracks between worlds, showing you the faces you never became, versions of you living other lives, brushing briefly against your awareness as you drift? Think about the haunting idea of doppelgangers. Stories across cultures warn of seeing one's double. In folklore, meeting your doppelganger was an omen of death. But what if those stories were not warnings, but fragments of a deeper truth? Perhaps the unease comes not from superstition, but from recognition. When you see a face too much like yours, you are not seeing a stranger. You are seeing one of the faces you never became, alive in another fold of time, brushing momentarily into your line of sight. The terror is not in the face. It is in realizing you are not unique. Neuroscience gives us another clue. The brain is wired to detect faces with astonishing sensitivity. It finds them in clouds, in wood grain, in shadows. Some call this pareidolia, seeing meaning where there is none. But what if the brain is not mistaken? What if it is tuned to catch glimpses of the faces you never became, scattered faintly in the patterns of the world? When you see yourself in a window's reflection, distorted into someone unrecognizable, maybe it isn't only distortion. Maybe it is a signal from another self, layered into the glass, reminding you that your face is not singular. Now consider how identity itself changes with time. Every decade, your face shifts. Wrinkles etch themselves in places you didn't expect. Features soften or harden. Expressions become second nature. And yet, none of these changes feel final. You are always aware of the face you might have had, the one shaped by different choices, different struggles, different joys. This sense of incompleteness is not dissatisfaction. It is awareness. You are glimpsing faces you never became, carried by other versions who lived differently. This also reframes beauty and self-perception. When you feel dissatisfaction with your own face, when you wish it were sharper, smoother, kinder, stronger, perhaps you are not simply comparing yourself to others. Perhaps you are comparing yourself to other versions of yourself, faces that exist elsewhere, carried by lives you didn't live. The ache you feel is not envy but resonance, the faint recognition of a face you know belongs to you but will never wear here. But this thought can be comforting too, because it means you are never only the face you see in the mirror. You are also the faces you never became. The ones smiling elsewhere, crying elsewhere, laughing elsewhere. You are not one mask but a constellation of masks, all alive, all real, all yours. The self you think you are is only one expression, one branch, one version. Others continue, carrying pieces of you you'll never know, but will always belong to. Tonight, stand in front of a mirror. Look closely, not at the surface, but at the possibilities. Notice how your eyes suggest other shapes they could have taken, how your mouth hints at smiles you never learned, how your skin carries shadows of lines that might never appear here, but exist elsewhere. Every reflection contains not one face but thousands, layered invisibly, waiting in silence. You are not defined by the face you wear now. You are also the faces you never became, and they are looking back at you, always. Destiny is usually imagined as singular, a road stretching ahead, shaped by your choices and circumstances, guiding you to some inevitable end. But what if destiny is not one voice, not one path, not one road? What if every possible version of you carries its own destiny, and those destinies do not vanish into isolation, but whisper together, layering into a chorus too subtle for most ears? When you sit in silence, when you feel a pressure in your chest that you cannot explain, perhaps you are hearing it, the whispering of destinies, yours and yours, and yours, calling to one another through the walls of reality. Think about those moments when you feel torn between choices. You stand at a crossroads, weighing options, uncertain which way to turn. You tell yourself you are deciding, but maybe you are not deciding at all. Maybe you are overhearing destinies whispering together, each one tugging at you, each one already alive in another version of your life. What you feel as conflict may be nothing more than echoes, the pull of multiple selves calling from the paths they already walk. This is why decisions feel so heavy. You believe it is because the future is at stake, but the heaviness comes from the fact that the future is already alive in multiple versions. You are not deciding whether the path exists. You are only choosing which whisper you will follow into awareness. The others continue, whether you hear them or not, their destinies unfolding elsewhere. The weight is not choice itself. It is the density of overlapping lives pressing against you, their whispers crowding the silence. Philosophy brushes against this unease in the old debate between determinism and free will. If everything is determined, then destiny is fixed. If free will exists, then destiny is chosen. But destinies whispering together suggest something stranger. Both are true. Every possible destiny already exists, unfolding simultaneously, but you can only inhabit one at a time. Free will, then, is not creation, but attention. The act of noticing one whisper and following it, while others continue without you. Think of music. A single melody can be beautiful, but beneath it, harmonies swell, bass notes hum, and rhythms layer. You often don't notice them unless you listen carefully, but without them, the song would be thin, incomplete. Your life is like that. The melody is the destiny you live here, now, in this branch. But the harmonies are other destinies, other versions of you, whispering just beneath awareness. Sometimes you catch them in dreams. Sometimes you hear them in déjà vu. Sometimes you feel them in sudden intuition. They are not illusions. They are the music of many selves playing at once. Have you ever felt an inexplicable sense of being pulled in two directions, even when one of them seems irrational? Maybe you chose stability, yet you felt the call of risk, long after the decision was made. Or maybe you pursued risk, yet stability still hummed in the background, like a forgotten promise. These feelings are not indecision, they are resonance. You are not only yourself, you are entangled with other yous whose destinies hum close to yours, whispering their presence, reminding you of lives you didn't live but still belong to. Neuroscience lends a faint clue here. Studies on decision-making show the brain lights up with multiple possible actions before you consciously choose. In that fraction of a second, multiple futures exist in parallel. You only follow one, but the others don't vanish. They continue in silence. Perhaps this microcosm reflects the larger truth. Destinies don't disappear when unchosen. They remain alive, whispering from just beyond awareness. Your brain doesn't only hold your choices, it also resonates with the choices of selves you will never see. Now imagine, standing in a great hall. The air is thick, but not with voices you can hear clearly. Instead, you sense murmurs, layered, overlapping, a chorus of selves speaking at once. At first, it feels chaotic, impossible to decipher. But if you listen long enough, you begin to catch phrases, words, breaths. One voice calls you toward love, another toward solitude, another toward courage, another toward surrender. Each one is yours, but each belongs to a different version of you. This hall is not imagination. It is the architecture of identity, where destinies whisper together endlessly. Dreams often carry this hall into your sleep. You dream of being in places you've never seen, speaking words you didn't mean to say, walking roads you never walked here. These are not random hallucinations, they are echoes. Dreams may be the only time when the hall grows loud enough to break through, when destinies that belong to other versions of you whisper too loudly to ignore. You wake unsettled because you brushed against lives you are not living here. Yet their whispers linger, shaping your mood, altering your choices, guiding your sense of self. This thought reframes purpose. People spend lifetimes searching for destiny, believing it to be singular, fixed, hidden like treasure. But destiny is not one treasure, it is countless. Each version of you carries its own purpose, its own arc, its own meaning. The search for destiny is not about finding the one, it is about tuning your ear, deciding which whisper you will listen to now, knowing others will continue whether you notice or not. Purpose is not discovery, it is alignment. There is comfort in this realization, because it means you cannot miss your destiny. Whichever path you walk, whichever choice you follow, whichever life you inhabit, a destiny is there, waiting. The others do not vanish. They whisper in harmony, carried by other selves. You are never outside the music, never outside the story. You are always living a destiny, even if it isn't the one you expected. Tonight, as you sit in the quiet, listen closely. Notice the faint murmurs in the silence, the strange pull of possibilities that hover at the edges of your awareness. Don't dismiss them. Don't call them fantasy. They are real. They are the voices of destinies whispering together, reminding you that you are more than one, that you are never alone, that every path is already alive. All you need to do is listen. Think about the doors in your life. Some you've closed gently, some you've slammed in anger, some you've walked past and never opened at all. You convince yourself that once a door is shut, it is finished. That chapter of life is over, that possibility sealed. But what if no door ever truly closes? What if every decision you made left the door ajar, and versions of you continue to walk through it endlessly, shaping lives you'll never see? The hallways of existence are not lined with locked doors. They are filled with doors left open always, waiting for you or another version of you to step through. Imagine standing in a corridor that stretches forever. On either side are doors, some familiar, some strange, some frightening. You push one open and walk inside, and your life unfolds from what you find there. But you didn't close the other doors. They didn't vanish when you chose. They remain ajar, quietly swinging in a breeze you cannot feel. In this branch, you moved forward. In another, you lingered at the threshold. In another still, you stepped inside. Every door continues to lead somewhere. None of them are sealed. This explains the weight of memory. Why do certain places pull at you, even years after you've left? Why do certain people linger in your mind long after you part ways? Because those doors remain open. Another version of you is still there, walking through them, living a life where you stayed instead of leaving, where you spoke instead of staying silent, where you risked instead of retreating. The nostalgia you feel is not longing for something gone. It is recognition of something still alive, just not here. Philosophy has long spoken of thresholds. Heidegger described existence as a constant movement toward possibility, a standing at the edge of doors, but he, like many, imagined those doors as binary, entered or not. The truth may be stranger. Every threshold is endless. Every door leads somewhere, and none of them are ever locked. What you think of as moving on may only be shifting into one room, while countless other versions of you step into the others. Science echoes this unease. In quantum mechanics, when a particle faces multiple paths, it doesn't choose one and erase the rest. All paths exist simultaneously, superimposed. You perceive only one, but the others continue. Life may work the same way. Each door you face is not one opportunity among many. It is all opportunities, all open, all taken by versions of you branching endlessly into the halls of reality. You don't close doors, you only walk away from them. Think of the moments in your life when you told yourself, "It's too late to go back, too late to change, too late to try again." Those words carry weight, because they feel final, like doors slamming shut. But what if you're wrong? What if nothing is ever too late, because nothing ever ends? Somewhere, you did go back. Somewhere, you did change. Somewhere, you did try again. And those doors are still swinging open, even now. This also reframes regret. Regret feels like standing in front of a closed door, staring at the wood, knowing you'll never open it. But if doors are always left open, regret is only blindness. You cannot see the version of you who walked through, but they exist, alive in another hall. Their laughter, their sorrow, their lessons, all real, all yours, even if you cannot touch them here. Regret is not the end. It is a reminder that doors are still open, even if you cannot step back through in this version. Dreams often reveal this truth. Have you noticed how often dreams place you back in old houses, old schools, old relationships? Doors you thought were closed long ago suddenly open again, and you walk through as if no time has passed. You may wake and tell yourself it was memory, but what if it was more? What if dreams are visits, moments where the doors between versions swing wide enough for you to step through and glimpse the lives you are still living elsewhere? That's why dreams feel both familiar and foreign. They are not fiction, they are rooms still alive. Now, imagine your present. Look at the decisions before you, the thresholds you hesitate to cross. You may tell yourself, if I don't act now, the chance will be gone. But if doors are always left open, then the chance is never gone. One version of you steps through today, another waits a year, another never enters at all. Each version continues. Each destiny unfolds. The urgency you feel is not about the door closing. It is about which version of you will walk through. There is a strange comfort here, because it means nothing is wasted. Not opportunities, not relationships, not time. Every door you passed still opens somewhere, still leads to a room filled with life. You are not trapped in the one room you entered. You are connected to all of them, woven together by the countless doors you once touched. When you feel the pull of what if, you are not imagining loss. You are sensing another version of yourself, still standing in that open doorway waiting. Tonight, as you settle into silence, think of the doors you thought you closed forever, the friendships you abandoned, the chances you missed, the risks you never took. Now imagine them open again, because they are. Somewhere, you are still walking through them. Somewhere, the story you mourn is alive. Somewhere, you are still stepping into that room, still speaking that word, still reaching for that chance. Doors are never locked. They are left open always. We often think of choices as moments that vanish once made. You decide, you move forward, and the decision belongs to the past. But what if choices don't die after you make them? What if they keep breathing, alive, restless, echoing in the air long after you've walked away? Every choice you make doesn't just mark a point in time. It creates a living thread that continues without you. And every choice you avoided doesn't fade into nothingness. It still breathes, carried by another version of you who followed it. Choices are not final acts. They are lungs that never stop inhaling and exhaling, feeding countless versions of you across endless realities. Think about the choice you made this morning. Even something as small as the food you ate. In this version you picked one dish, but in another, you chose differently. That other choice didn't vanish. It still breathes, creating a ripple of consequences that grow into their own life. Some of those ripples are subtle, others become tidal waves, but all of them exist, carried by selves who live alongside you in silence. What you call a single day is actually millions of choices still unfolding. This explains why the past doesn't feel as distant as it should. You can tell yourself, that moment is over, but sometimes it rises again, haunting you, calling to you, tugging at your mind like a hand on your sleeve. It feels alive, because it is alive. That choice is still breathing in another version of you. You aren't remembering it so much as overhearing its rhythm. That's why regret lingers so painfully, and why joy sometimes returns without warning. The choice isn't gone, it still inhales, exhales, endlessly. Philosophy often imagined choice as a door you step through, with the others sealed behind you. But if choices keep breathing, then all the doors remain ajar, each one alive, each one still humming with possibility. The one you walked through is only one among many, and somewhere, you are still walking through the others. Sartre once wrote that we are condemned to freedom, forced to choose at every moment. But perhaps freedom is larger than he realized. We are not condemned to one choice. We are carried by all of them, spread across realities we can't see but can faintly sense. Think of those moments where you feel divided within yourself, unable to shake the sense that another path might have been better. That tension doesn't come from imagination, it comes from resonance. Somewhere, that other path is still alive, still breathing, still unfolding. You feel its breath, because it is close, pressing faintly against your own. The unease you carry isn't weakness, it's awareness. You are not only this choice, you are the sum of countless choices still breathing together. Science gestures toward this mystery in small ways. Neuroscience shows that decisions begin in the brain before we consciously notice them. In those milliseconds, multiple options compete, and you become aware only of the one that wins. But the others don't vanish. They are carried by versions of you who still follow them. Quantum physics whispers the same particles split across outcomes, coexisting until observed. What you call one choice may simply be one branch you are aware of, while the others continue elsewhere, their breaths invisible but real. Dreams often reveal this in strange ways. You dream of a life you didn't live, yet it feels detailed, familiar, textured with experiences that don't belong to you. Perhaps those are not fantasies but visits, moments when you cross into the breath of another choice, glimpsing the world it continues to sustain. When you wake, the dream feels both foreign and yours, because it is. Choices keep breathing even in sleep. This reframes responsibility. You think your choices define you, that you must carry the burden of every decision alone. But if choices keep breathing, then you are not carrying them alone. You are one version among many, and each version carries only its branch. The weight you feel is shared across countless selves. This doesn't erase accountability, but it does mean you are never trapped. Whatever choice you regret, another you has chosen differently. Whatever choice you avoided, another you has stepped into it. You are never locked into one life. You are part of a living network of choices breathing forever. Now, picture standing in a field at night. Around you, countless candles flicker. Each candle is a choice. Some glowing brightly, some burning low, some only sparks waiting to rise. Together, they create a horizon of light. You can only hold one flame, but all of them belong to you. Their heat, their breath, their glow, real, alive, endless. That is what it means to live inside choices that keep breathing. Tonight, as you sit in silence, think about the choices you thought were gone, the ones you buried in regret, the ones you dismissed as trivial, the ones you mourn as lost. Now imagine them inhaling, exhaling, alive. Somewhere, they continue. Somewhere, you continue. Choices do not die. They keep breathing, always. Close your eyes and think about this moment. You listening, breathing, existing here. Now imagine another you, listening at the same time, in another place, on another path. The strangeness is that they are not in the past, not in the future. They are here, alive at the same time. Parallel moments are not theoretical. They exist together, layered invisibly, unfolding side by side. You are not moving through time alone. You are surrounded by parallel moments, each alive, each carried by versions of you who inhabit choices you didn't take. Think about your morning. Perhaps you woke, ate breakfast, checked your phone. That was one thread. But in another, you skipped breakfast. In another, you never looked at your phone. In another, you spoke words you didn't hear. These moments don't trail behind you like shadows. They exist simultaneously. Somewhere, right now, other versions of this very moment are alive. You are not remembering them. You are brushing against their presence. This is why life sometimes feels layered. You walk into a room and feel like something is off, as though invisible weight lingers in the air. Science calls it misfiring memory, or unconscious association. But what if it's more? What if you are sensing parallel moments still alive? The version of this room where something else happened. The version of this day that unfolded differently. The unease you feel is not confusion. It is recognition. Philosophy hinted at this long ago. Leibniz spoke of possible worlds, each fully real, each containing different versions of events. He argued that reality was not one world but countless, layered by God's choice. Modern physics rephrases it, many worlds interpretation, parallel universes branching endlessly. But you don't need theory to know it. You feel it. You sense it in déjà vu, in dreams, in the uncanny tug of what if that arrives uninvited. You are not imagining. You are brushing against parallel moments still alive. Now consider relationships. You speak to someone, you share a laugh, you build a bond, but in another parallel moment, that bond fractured. In another it deepened into something unimaginable. Both exist. That's why memories of people can haunt you so sharply. You are not only remembering what did happen, you are sensing what is still happening elsewhere, alive in parallel. Love and loss are not opposites. They are versions, side by side, both breathing. Neuroscience gives us a hint of how this might feel. The brain processes countless possibilities in milliseconds, discarding most, leaving you aware of only one. But the others don't vanish. They continue carried by selves you can't perceive. Every blink, every breath, every heartbeat branches into countless parallel versions. You are awake in one, but others are just as awake, just as alive. Your life is not one timeline but a field of parallel moments, each alive, each carrying you. Dreams are perhaps the clearest window. You find yourself in situations that feel real but belong to no memory. You are living moments that seem impossible, yet they carry the texture of reality. What if they are not inventions? What if they are visits? Dreams might be awareness slipping into a parallel moment where another you lives differently. You wake unsettled, not because the dream was false, but because it was true somewhere else. This reframes fate. You believe your story unfolds step by step, but in truth, many stories unfold at once. You are one actor on one stage, but countless stages are lit simultaneously, each carrying a version of you, each enacting a different script. Fate is not a single road, it is a theatre where every play is performed at once. You are both unique and multiplied, singular and infinite, alive in countless parallel moments. Now, imagine standing in a field. Around you, countless lanterns glow. Each lantern is a parallel moment. Different choices, different lives, different versions. You can only walk toward one, but the others don't go out. They flicker endlessly, lighting the horizon. Sometimes you sense their glow, even when you are focused on your own path. That glow is déjà vu, intuition, memory that doesn't belong to this version. It is the light of parallel moments pressing against yours. This realization changes regret. You think of choices you didn't make, roads you didn't take, moments you let pass. You imagine them gone forever, but they are not gone. They are alive, carried by other yous. You can't walk them here, but they are still walked, still lived, still unfolding. Regret, then, is not about loss. It is about resonance, feeling the pull of a moment that is still alive, even if not here. And it changes hope too, because if parallel moments are alive, then everything you dream of already exists. The version of you who found courage, who spoke, who risked, who changed, they are not fantasies, they are real, alive, right now. You may not inhabit them, but you are connected to them, woven into their breath. Hope is not reaching for what doesn't exist, it is listening to what already does. Tonight, as you listen in silence, think of this right now. Countless parallel moments are alive. In one, you turned this video off. In another, you never found it. In another, you are still here, listening. Exactly as you are now, all of them are real. All of them are alive. And somewhere, every version of you breathes in parallel, reminding you that you are never just one. You are infinite. You are alive, in moments still unfolding everywhere, always. Every reflection begins as something simple. Light bouncing back, an image of yourself caught on a smooth surface. But reflections hold more than light. They hold memory, possibility, and the presence of versions of you that refuse to fade. You've noticed it before, the way your reflection lingers after you've turned away, the way a mirror seems to hold a trace of you long after you've stopped looking. Perhaps that's because it does. Reflections are not fleeting. They are echoes that refuse to disappear, stubborn reminders that every version of you remains alive in surfaces you've touched with your gaze. Think of how strange it feels to see yourself in old photographs. You know it's you, and yet it feels like someone else entirely. That image doesn't vanish when you close the album. It continues to exist, frozen, staring back with a life of its own. Each photograph is a reflection that refuses to fade, holding not just your face but the weight of the version you were then. The choices you had yet to make, the roads you had yet to walk. Those versions still breathe through the image, still waiting on the page. Mirrors amplify this mystery. You glance at your reflection dozens of times a day, usually without thought. Yet sometimes, unexpectedly, the reflection grips you. You hold your own gaze longer than usual, and unease rises. Why? Because deep down you sense it isn't just you looking. It's another you, refusing to vanish, refusing to let the surface erase them. When you look away, they do not. They linger, patient, alive in the glass, still staring after you've gone. Philosophy brushed against this with Plato's idea of shadows and images, arguing that reflections are weaker copies of reality. But what if Plato was wrong? What if reflections are not weaker at all, but parallel, not illusions, but presences? Each reflection is not a degraded copy, but another version of you, alive on the other side of the surface. They do not fade when you walk away, because they are not dependent on you. They live alongside you, layered into the world, waiting to be seen again. This explains why reflections carry such weight in myth. Across cultures, mirrors and pools were thought to trap souls, to hold fragments of identity. Breaking a mirror wasn't about bad luck. It was about shattering a version of yourself, scattering it across shards that never fully vanish. Even now, stories of haunted mirrors persist, each rooted in the idea that reflections linger, refusing to fade even when the living turn away. These tales disturb us because they strike a chord we can't dismiss. Reflections might be more alive than we want to believe. Science gives a curious parallel. When light reflects, it doesn't simply bounce, it interacts, it lingers in waves, leaving traces even after the source is gone. Some physicists argue that every photon leaves a record in the fabric of the universe, a reflection that never fades completely. If that's true for particles, why not for selves? Why not for identities caught in mirrors, in windows, in water? Maybe every reflection you've ever seen still exists, alive in folds of reality, breathing silently beyond your reach. Dreams often reveal this persistence. You dream of mirrors, of looking into reflections that behave strangely, delayed movements, distorted faces, even unfamiliar versions of yourself staring back. These are not random nightmares. They are glimpses of reflections that never faded, versions of you alive in surfaces you've forgotten. They appear in dreams because the boundaries are thinner, the divide between your awareness and theirs less rigid. When you wake unsettled, it is not because you imagined it, but because you touched it. This reframes memory itself. Perhaps memories are less like recordings, and more like reflections, images that linger, refusing to fade, demanding to be acknowledged. That would explain why some memories feel so vivid, so alive, even decades later. They are not stored passively in the brain. They are active reflections, pressing against you, whispering, "I am still here." When you recall them, you are not only looking backward, you are meeting versions of yourself still alive in those reflections. Now consider your daily life. Every screen you look into, every polished surface you pass, every window at night that catches your gaze, each one holds not just an image, but a presence. You may forget, but the reflection does not. It waits, refusing to fade, alive in the silence of surfaces you no longer notice. This is why certain mirrors unsettle you, why certain photographs make you uneasy, why certain glimpses in glass stop you in your tracks. You are brushing against versions of yourself that refuse to vanish, reminding you that you are not singular, that you are layered across surfaces as much as across time. There is both terror and comfort in this. Terror, because it means you cannot escape yourself. Comfort, because it means you are never lost. Every version of you lives somewhere, if not in memory, then in reflection. You are scattered across surfaces, layered into glass and water and silver, refusing to be erased. When you feel alone, look again. Your reflections are still there, countless versions of you waiting, reminding, whispering. Tonight, pause for a moment. Find a mirror, a window, even the black screen of a phone. Look into it longer than feels natural. Notice the way your reflection begins to shift, the way it feels alive, the way it seems to hold more than your surface. That is because it does. Reflections never fade. They wait, they breathe, they remind you that you are infinite, layered, multiplied, alive in every glance you've ever cast. You are not one face, you are all of them, staring back forever. Every choice you avoided, every road you didn't step onto, still exists. And those roads are not empty. They are filled with versions of you who walked forward where you hesitated, who took steps you never dared, who followed paths you dismissed. They are the roads taken by others, but those others are not strangers. They are you scattered across reality, each one alive inside a journey you abandoned. You walk one road, but countless versions of you travel the ones left behind. Think of the simplest fork, the job you didn't accept, the love you didn't pursue, the place you didn't move to. For you, that decision was final, the road sealed, but it wasn't. In another version, you said yes. You took the risk, you walked away from everything you knew, and that version is still alive, still moving forward, on the road you left untaken. You may feel their presence sometimes, in daydreams, in regret, in the odd tug of curiosity that returns long after you thought it was buried. That tug is not fantasy, it is contact. This explains why regret feels heavier than logic can justify. You might regret a small decision, one no one else even noticed, yet it gnaws at you. Why? Because you sense the weight of the version of you who took the opposite road. They are not gone, they are alive, pressing faintly against your awareness, reminding you that the road you mourn was never erased. It is being walked, just not by the self you see in the mirror. Philosophy long treated life as a single road, one chance, one destiny, one narrative. But some thinkers hinted otherwise. William James spoke of the multiverse of experience, countless worlds overlapping, each filled with possibilities. The roads you didn't take are not barren, they are alive with other versions of you, whispering through the walls of reality. Sometimes, if you listen carefully, you can almost hear their footsteps. Now think about déjà vu. You walk a street for the first time and feel you've been there before. Science calls it a misfire of memory, a trick of the brain. But what if it's more? What if déjà vu is the faint brush of another, you walking the same road in another version? The familiarity you feel is not mistake, it is resonance. The road is alive in more than one branch, and your awareness momentarily slips into contact with the footsteps of another self. Dreams give us stronger glimpses. You dream of being somewhere unfamiliar yet intensely real. You walk down roads you've never seen, live moments you've never lived, yet they feel undeniable. What if dreams are visits? What if, in sleep, you step briefly into the roads taken by others, living their choices for a fragment of time before waking to your own? The strangeness of dreams is not fiction, it is recognition of roads that remain alive elsewhere. Science offers an eerie parallel. In quantum mechanics, particles don't follow one path but many, spreading across probabilities until observed. The roads are all real, all taken, all alive. You perceive only one, but the others continue. Life may be no different. Every road branches, and every branch is traveled. You are one traveler, but you are also many, scattered across roads you cannot see but can sometimes sense. Relationships deepen this truth. Imagine the person you almost loved but didn't. In this version, that road ended at hesitation, but in another, you walked forward. You spoke, you stayed, you built a life together. That life is still alive, carried by another you. That's why thoughts of them return, sometimes years later, uninvited. It isn't memory alone, it's the echo of another self, walking the road you never did hear. Love is never singular, it is lived in countless versions, on countless roads. This realization reshapes loneliness. You may feel isolated, convinced you are walking alone, but you are never truly alone. The roads around you are filled with you, thousands of versions traveling alongside, just beyond sight. Their presence hums faintly in the background, the whisper of parallel footsteps. Sometimes the weight of that presence overwhelms you, a heaviness you can't explain. Other times it comforts you, reminding you that every road is alive, and you are part of something larger than one fragile path. Picture yourself at a crossroads. One road leads to comfort, the other to risk. You hesitate, then choose comfort. From your perspective, the moment is done, the risk abandoned. But from reality's perspective, both roads are alive. One version of you walks into safety, another into danger, another into adventure. You inhabit only one, but the others continue, filled with the breath of selves who are as real as you. The crossroads is not a single choice, it is a multiplication, a scattering of lives into countless roads. This reframes hope too. You may long for a life you didn't live, a road you never took. You imagine it lost forever. But if every road is taken by another you, then that life is not gone. It exists, alive in parallel, carried by someone who is also you. Hope, then, is not about chasing the impossible. It is about listening for the footsteps of selves already walking the life you thought you missed. They are real, and in some sense, you are already there. Tonight, think of the roads you mourn. Think of the ones you abandoned, the ones you regret, the ones you still long for. Know that they are not gone. They are alive, carried by versions of you who walk them endlessly. Listen closely. You might even hear their whispers in your dreams, their footsteps in your silences, their breath in the corners of your mind. Roads are never empty. They are taken by others, and those others are you. When you think of your past self, you usually imagine them as gone, outgrown, buried beneath time, sealed away in memory. Childhood you, teenage you, the you who stumbled through mistakes or stood tall in triumph. All of them feel like fossils, shadows of someone you used to be. But what if those past selves aren't gone at all? What if they are still awake, still alive in their own branches of reality, still breathing in moments you've left behind? You are not only the self sitting here now, you are also every self you've ever been, alive in parallel, still walking through the rooms of time you think you abandoned. Think about your childhood bedroom. Even if it no longer exists physically, it exists in memory, and maybe more than memory. Somewhere a younger you is still sitting there, still lost in imagination, still carrying dreams too large for their body. The adult you thinks that room is long gone, but to that version, it is still the present, still alive, still unfolding, and they are not dreaming of you as memory. You are the dream, the future they never touched. while they remain awake in their own moment. This is why nostalgia stings. You return to old places and feel them charged with presence, as if the walls remember, as if footsteps echo that no one else hears. Science calls it emotional memory. But what if it's more? What if what you feel is the press of past selves, who are still awake, still moving in their own versions of time? They don't fade when you leave. They don't dissolve into nothingness. They remain, alive in their own now, brushing faintly against yours. Philosophy hinted at this in strange ways. Kierkegaard wrote of repetition, the idea that life echoes itself endlessly. Augustine spoke of time as an eternal present, all moments alive together. If that is true, then your past selves are not gone. They are simply elsewhere in the folds of time. When you remember them, you are not recalling the dead, you are touching the living. Neuroscience offers a clue here too. Studies show that remembering an event activates brain patterns almost identical to experiencing it again. To your mind, memory is not a faded recording. It is a reactivation, a reliving. Perhaps that's because memories are not stored inside you at all, but are connections to versions of you still awake in the past. You don't just recall, you reach across branches, brushing against selves who continue where you left them. Think about how often you argue with yourself. The adult you tells the younger you, you should have done better, you should have known. But what if the argument is real? What if the younger you is still alive, still awake, still hearing those whispers? When you feel shame about the past, perhaps it isn't only self-criticism, it is resonance with a version of you still struggling, still awake in their own thread. Your pain is doubled because you are not alone in it. Dreams intensify this suspicion. Have you ever dreamt of yourself younger, reliving moments with uncanny clarity? It feels too real, too vivid, as though you didn't just remember it, you stepped back into it. What if that's exactly what happened? What if dreams are the only times you cross into the lives of past selves who are still awake? You don't imagine them, you visit them, and they in turn visit you, whispering forward into your present. This reframes forgiveness. You carry regret like a weight, convinced you must forgive yourself for mistakes that no longer exist. But if your past selves are still awake, forgiveness isn't about the past, it is about connection. You are not forgiving ghosts. You are reaching across time to embrace versions of yourself still living through moments you once endured. Forgiveness becomes a dialogue, a hand extended to someone still awake in another fold of time. It also reframes growth. You tell yourself you've changed, that you've outgrown who you used to be. But if past selves are alive, then growth is not replacement. It is expansion. You are not one self improving linearly. You are many selves, all awake, all alive, each carrying their moment. You are not only who you are now, you are also every self you ever were, each one still breathing in silence, each one adding to the chorus of identity. Picture standing in a great cathedral of selves. Each alcove holds a version of you, child, teenager, young adult, every stage you've ever been. They are not statues. They are awake, alive, still moving, still feeling. Some look at you with hope, some with disappointment, some with awe, and you realize they are not gone. You are not their replacement. You are their continuation, their witness, their sibling across time. Together, you form something vaster than one linear story. This thought can be unsettling. It means you can never fully leave behind who you were, but it can also be comforting, because it means you are never alone. Even in your darkest nights, past selves are awake with you. Even in your brightest moments, they are celebrating too. You are not one. You are many, and the many are still alive. Tonight, as you sit with these words, think of the version of you you miss most. The child who dreamed, the teenager who stumbled, the young adult who reached too far or not far enough. Don't imagine them gone. Imagine them awake, breathing, looking at you through the folds of time. You are not remembering. You are connecting, and they are still here, past selves still awake. Every night you fall asleep, your mind drifts into landscapes that feel both impossible and familiar. Streets you've never walked, faces you've never met, events that never happened, yet they carry the weight of reality. Most people dismiss dreams as meaningless noise, the brain's way of cleaning itself. But what if dreams are not illusions at all? What if they are worlds built by other versions of you? Worlds still alive, still unfolding, each one as real as the one you wake into. Dreams are not fictions, they are bridges. They are worlds being built by selves you cannot see, but whose work you feel every night. Think of the last vivid dream you had. Maybe you were standing in a city you didn't recognize. yet you moved through it with the certainty of someone who belonged there. Maybe you spoke with people you've never met, yet you knew their names, their stories, their hearts. That sense of familiarity doesn't come from nowhere, it comes from recognition. Somewhere, another version of you lives in that city, speaks with those people, walks those streets. When you dream, you are not creating, it is being shown to you. This explains why some dreams linger longer than waking memories. You wake up unsettled, or comforted, or haunted, and the feeling clings to you all day. That weight is not just emotion, it is residue. You carried it across the bridge, from a world built by another you into this one. It doesn't fade because it doesn't belong only to imagination. It belongs to experience, even if not here. Philosophy has long flirted with this suspicion. Descartes asked how we could be sure waking life is not a dream. Eastern traditions like Hinduism and Buddhism have spoken of the world itself as Maya, illusion, a dream of consciousness. But what if the truth is layered? What if waking life is one dream among many, and the dreams you enter at night are glimpses of parallel lives where other versions of you are still awake? You are not escaping reality when you dream, you are entering another one. Neuroscience provides strange clues. Studies show that dreams often simulate challenges, rehearsing events as though they were real. Soldiers dream of battles before they fight them. Students dream of exams before they take them. But sometimes dreams rehearse events that never arrive in this life. Why? Perhaps because they do arrive in another. Dreams may be shared across selves, echoes of experiences filtering through the web of versions. When you dream of something impossible here, it may be because it is happening elsewhere, carried by another you. Consider recurring dreams. The same house, the same street, the same situation repeating over years. Why does your mind return to the same landscapes? Perhaps because those landscapes are not inventions, they are worlds that continue without you. You visit them briefly, then wake, but they remain alive, waiting. That is why they never fade. They are not images, but places, not fantasies, but realities. This reframes nightmares too. You wake sweating, heart racing, terrified of what you saw. Science says it is stress, unresolved fears. But what if nightmares are glimpses of lives where those fears are real? Other versions of you who suffered, who failed, who lived through darkness. Their worlds press into your dreams, and you feel their weight as terror. Nightmares disturb you not because they are false, but because they are true somewhere else. Now think about how often dreams bleed into waking life. You dream of someone you haven't seen in years, and the next day they call. You dream of a place you've never visited, and months later you walk its streets. Coincidence, you tell yourself. But maybe not. Maybe it is connection. The dream was not prediction. It was memory of a world where that call already happened, where that street was already familiar. The dream didn't warn you, it reminded you. This also changes how we see imagination. Perhaps creativity is not invention, but translation. Writers, painters, musicians often say their best ideas came from somewhere else, as if they arrived fully formed. Maybe they did. Maybe what we call imagination is contact with dreams that built worlds elsewhere, versions of ourselves handing across fragments of their reality into ours. Every story, every melody, every painting may be borrowed, whispered through the thin walls between dreams and waking. Picture it now, a vast library filled not with books, but with sleeping figures. Each sleeper dreams, and each dream builds a world. The worlds do not vanish when the sleeper wakes. They continue, alive, tended by other versions of the dreamer who remain inside. Together, the sleepers form a network of realities, each feeding into the others, each sharing fragments in whispers we call dreams. You are one of those sleepers, and every night you step into the library of yourself. This thought can be unsettling. It means that your dreams are not private. They are shared. That the faces you meet, the places you visit, the choices you live at night are not fantasies but glimpses of versions of you still awake in other lives. It means you are more than the person listening now. You are a builder of worlds, a traveler of realities, a witness to lives you'll never fully inhabit. And those lives will not fade when you wake. They remain alive, just beyond the edge of sight. Tonight, when you close your eyes, pay attention. Notice the clarity of the landscapes, the weight of the conversations, the texture of the impossible. Don't dismiss them when you wake. Don't call them meaningless. They are worlds still alive, built by versions of you you'll never meet, but always remain connected to. Dreams are not illusions. They are bridges. they are proof that you are infinite. And every world you build in sleep continues without you, forever. When you recall a memory, you assume it belongs only to you. The birthday you celebrated, the conversation you had, the mistake you made, you carry them like stones in your pocket, proof of who you are. But what if not all your memories belong here? What if some of them are borrowed, carried across from versions of you living elsewhere? And what if the memories you cannot recall, the ones you've forgotten completely, still live on, untouched, unbroken, in other selves who walk through them as vividly as you once did? Memories do not vanish. They live elsewhere too, scattered across the infinite archive of you. Think about the strange experience of déjà vu. You walk into a place you've never visited and feel certain you have been there before. Science calls it a misfire of the brain, a trick of familiarity, but perhaps what you are experiencing is the echo of a memory that doesn't belong to this version of you. Another self, in another branch, has lived this moment already. Their memory presses faintly against yours, and you mistake it for repetition. It isn't repetition. It is overlap. This also explains why some memories feel more real than others. Certain scenes from childhood rise with uncanny clarity, the smell of rain, the texture of a toy, the sound of a voice. Others, equally important, blur into fog. You don't choose what lingers. Perhaps the clarity comes from resonance. Those are the memories being lived right now by other versions of you. They shine more brightly because they are still alive elsewhere, feeding into you across the hidden threads of existence. Philosophy has long wrestled with memory. Locke argued that personal identity rests in continuity of memory, that you are who you remember yourself to be. But if memories live elsewhere too, then identity is larger than Locke imagined. You are not just the sum of what you recall. You are also tied to what you forgot, what you never lived here, what continues in other branches. Identity becomes a chorus of memories, most unheard, some faintly leaking through, reminding you that you are vast beyond recognition. Neuroscience provides unsettling evidence. When researchers ask people to recall events, the brain reconstructs them imperfectly, filling gaps with invention. Each recall is less like replaying a recording, and more like painting anew. But where do the invented details come from? Perhaps they are not inventions. Perhaps they are memories bleeding in from elsewhere, fragments of other lives mixing with your own. This would explain why memory sometimes feels untrustworthy, yet strangely persuasive. It is not error. It is cross-talk between selves. Dreams deepen this suspicion. How often have you dreamt of events that feel like memories, though they never happened here? You wake convinced they were real. Sometimes you even argue with yourself. Did this happen? Or was it a dream? Maybe it was both. Maybe you brushed against a version of you living that moment, and their memory slipped into yours. The dream felt real because it was real, just not here. Now consider forgotten memories. Whole years of your life blur, names fade, faces dissolve. You assume they are gone, but they are not gone. They are alive elsewhere, carried intact by other versions of you who still walk through them. Your forgetting does not erase them from reality. It only closes your access. Somewhere the child who remembers every detail of a summer afternoon still lives in that moment. Somewhere the teenager who recalls a heartbreak you buried still feels it like a fresh wound. They are alive, awake, carrying what you cannot. This reframes the ache of nostalgia. When you long for the past, you assume it is because it is gone. But what if you ache because it is not gone? What if you ache because another version of you still lives inside it, still remembers it perfectly, and you can sense them faintly? Nostalgia, then, is not longing for what was but resonance with what still is, memories living elsewhere, tugging at you across branches. Relationships reveal this too. Think of people you no longer see, yet you still dream of them, still feel their presence. Maybe in this branch, they are gone, but in another they remain. Their memory does not vanish with absence. It continues to live elsewhere, pressing faintly into your awareness. That's why their presence lingers so strongly. You are not only recalling, you are connecting. Picture memory as a vast library. You are allowed into only one room at a time, but countless others are filled with books you cannot read. Each room belongs to another version of you. Each book holds moments they lived, faces they knew, choices they made. You think your shelf is small, but the library is infinite. And sometimes when the walls are thin, you hear echoes, pages turning in rooms you cannot enter, words being read by selves you will never meet. Those echoes are what you call déjà vu, nostalgia, dream. They are proof that memory never dies. This realization can be unsettling. It means your mind is not entirely your own. Some of what you feel, some of what you remember, may belong to other versions of you, but it can also be comforting. It means nothing is ever lost. The moments you mourn, the memories you forget, the lives you never lived, they are all preserved, carried by selves who continue elsewhere. You are not an incomplete story. You are part of a network of memory so vast it cannot be contained in oneself. Tonight, think of the memories that trouble you most, the ones you cannot let go of, the ones that blur, the ones that vanish when you try to hold them. Know this: they are not gone. They are alive, breathing in other branches, carried by other yous. When you feel the tug of déjà vu, or wake from a dream that feels like remembrance, pause. You are not mistaken. You are connecting. Your memories live elsewhere too. Imagine walking through a crowded station. People stream past, brushing shoulders, crossing paths, yet never stopping to know one another. You pass hundreds of strangers every day, and most remain invisible. Faces glanced at once, forgotten forever. Now imagine that among those strangers are versions of you. They walk close, so close their footsteps almost echo yours. Their lives intersect with yours for brief moments, but you never recognize them. Selves cross constantly, brushing against each other, yet never meeting. You are not only surrounded by strangers, you are surrounded by yourself. Think about the uncanny sensation of familiarity you sometimes feel when you pass someone on the street. They look nothing like you, yet you feel recognition, a strange pull in your chest. Perhaps it isn't them you're sensing. Perhaps it's you, another version brushing past, carrying the weight of choices you never made. The recognition is not for a stranger, it is for yourself. Philosophy has long spoken of the other as central to identity. Levinas argued that we define ourselves in relation to others, that the face of another is the foundation of ethics. But what if the other is sometimes yourself, not metaphorically, but literally, other versions of you, alive in parallel, crossing paths with you in silence? The stranger you ignore may not be a stranger at all. They may be one of the selves you will never meet fully, yet who shares your origin. Dreams sometimes expose this. You dream of walking through crowds filled with people who look almost familiar, yet their faces blur when you try to focus. What if those aren't inventions? What if they are glimpses of selves crossing near you, versions of you whose lives never intersect long enough for recognition? In dreams the walls thin, and you catch them in motion, brushing past you like shadows in a station you've visited countless times. Science gestures toward this mystery too. Quantum theory describes particles that interact briefly, then separate forever, their paths entangled, yet never touching again. Life may mirror this pattern. Versions of you brush close enough to resonate, your awareness hums, your intuition stirs, but then you part. They continue their lives, you continue yours, both unaware of how near you once were. Crossing without meeting is not failure, it is structure, it is how the universe weaves identity. Think about relationships that almost began but didn't. The conversation you nearly started, the person you nearly loved, the friendship that flickered but never caught flame. In your story, they feel like absence. But in another you spoke, you stayed, you built. Those versions still live, carried by other yous. That's why the memory of near misses haunts you more sharply than completed stories. You are not mourning what never was. You are sensing what still is, selves crossing, whispering faintly, yet never meeting here. This explains déjà vu of another kind. Not the familiarity of a place, but of a person. You meet someone new and feel instantly that you've known them before. Science calls it pattern recognition, the brain finding comfort in resemblance. But what if it's deeper? What if you recognize them because, in another branch, you have met before, yourselves crossed there, and the memory lingers faintly, slipping into this version as resonance? The recognition you feel is not error, it is continuity. Now picture the architecture of a city. Roads intersect, bridges connect, yet countless paths pass within inches of one another without touching. That is your life. Countless versions of you cross close, sometimes inches away, yet remain unseen. They laugh as you cry, they stumble as you stride. They live moments parallel to yours, brushing against your timeline without merging. The city is full of you, but you will never meet them all. There is strangeness in this thought, but also beauty, because it means you are never alone. Even when you feel isolated, lost in crowds, you are surrounded by selves you cannot see. Their presence hums beneath the silence, a quiet reassurance that identity is not solitary. You are part of a network of crossings, endless intersections, even if you never pause long enough to meet. Dreams return to this again. You dream of doubles, of shadows, of nearly familiar figures lingering in the background. You chase them, but they vanish before you reach them. That frustration is not random. It is truth disguised. You are chasing versions of yourself who cross near you, who walk paths so close to yours you can sense them, but who will never turn their head. The dream ends before the meeting, because in this branch there is no meeting, only crossing. This reframes loneliness. Loneliness feels like absence, like no one understands, no one shares your path. But if selves are always crossing, then you are never alone. You are part of a river of versions, each flowing beside you, brushing against you, sharing silent intersections. The solitude you feel is not emptiness. It is blindness to the multitude around you. Picture it now. A train station at night. The platforms are crowded, the air thick with movement. You walk forward, and dozens of others walk past, their faces blurred by motion. Among them are countless yous, versions who lived differently, who chose differently, who breathe differently. You do not meet their eyes, but they are there. They cross, they continue, they remain. You will never speak, yet you are bound forever by origin. Tonight, as you reflect, think of all the strangers you passed today, faces you didn't recognize, moments you didn't notice. Among them may have been versions of you, brushing so close their breath mingled with yours. You didn't meet, but that doesn't mean they weren't there. Selves cross constantly, silently, endlessly, and in that crossing, you are reminded that you are never singular. You are infinite. You are everywhere, always moving, always alive. When you think of the future, you imagine it waiting for you, like a blank canvas or a road untraveled. You believe it begins only when you arrive, that it lies dormant until you take the first step. But what if that isn't true? What if the future is not asleep at all? What if it is already alive, already breathing, already unfolding, whether you notice it or not? Futures are not waiting to be built. They are already in motion, carried forward by versions of you who stepped sooner, who made choices you haven't yet reached, who live in timelines just ahead of your awareness. This explains why some events feel inevitable. You sense them before they arrive, not as predictions but as recognition. Somewhere, they have already happened. Somewhere, another you has already lived through them. What you call intuition may not be foresight. It may be memory leaking from futures already in motion, brushing against your awareness like echoes traveling backward. You are not guessing. You are remembering forward. Think about the strange certainty you've sometimes felt before. Big moments. You knew the relationship would end. You knew the opportunity would come. You knew the words you were about to hear. Science calls this anticipation. Your brain reading subtle signals. But what if anticipation is more? What if it is contact with versions of you who already moved through those futures, who already carried the weight of those choices? Their knowledge bleeds into you as instinct, shaping the way you step forward. Philosophy often divides time into past, present, and future, treating them as distinct, but some thinkers suspected otherwise. Augustine described time as an eternal now, where past, present, and future coexist. Einstein echoed it, saying the distinction between past, present, and future is only a stubborn illusion. If that is true, then futures are not ahead. They are beside you, alive right now. You don't create them when you arrive. You step into them as they continue, already in motion, already alive. Dreams confirm this in strange ways. Have you ever dreamt of an event that later unfolded exactly as you saw it? Most dismiss it as coincidence. But what if dreams are glimpses of futures you already lived in another branch? You wake unsettled, not because the dream predicted, but because it remembered. Another you walked that path already, and in sleep, their memory slipped into your awareness. The dream was not prophecy, it was recall. This reframes déjà vu as well. That eerie feeling that you've already lived this moment may not be error, it may be truth. You have lived it, just not here. Another version of you already reached this point, and their memory brushes faintly against yours. Déjà vu is not confusion. It is recognition of futures already in motion, futures you are only now stepping into. Science hints at this with the concept of time symmetry. Some physicists argue that the laws of physics don't distinguish between past and future, that time flows both ways. If so, then the future may be as fixed as the past, already alive, already moving. You are not traveling toward it. You are traveling with it, one branch among many, carried along by currents that ripple endlessly forward. Now think of the moments you resisted, the futures you tried to avoid. Perhaps you delayed a decision, hoping it would never arrive. Yet somehow it found you anyway. That persistence may not be coincidence. Futures are not passive, they move. Even when you hesitate, another version of you has already stepped forward, and their momentum pulls you along. The future does not wait politely, it advances, whether you're ready or not. This can be frightening. It means you are not as free as you think, but it can also be comforting, because it means nothing is lost. The futures you fear are already being lived, but so are the futures you long for. Somewhere, you are already brave. Somewhere, you are already healed. Somewhere, you already spoke the words you thought you never could. Those versions are not fantasies. They are realities in motion, alive beside you, carrying possibilities you can still feel if you listen closely. Picture yourself walking along a shoreline. Waves crash endlessly, one after another. You believe the wave you see is the future arriving, fresh, new, born for you. But in truth, the wave has been in motion long before it reached your feet. It began far out at sea, gathering force, shaping itself long before you were aware. The same is true of your life. Futures are not born when you notice them. They are waves already in motion, rolling toward you from distances you cannot see. This realization reshapes hope and fear alike. Hope is not about waiting for something to happen. It is about recognizing that somewhere it already has. Fear is not about what might come. It is about resonance with versions of you who already faced it. Both emotions are signals, reminders that futures are alive, already unfolding in silence. You are not standing before emptiness. You are standing before motion. Tonight, as you sit in quiet, think about the futures you long for and the ones you dread. Know that both already exist, already in motion, already alive in branches you cannot yet see. You are not waiting for life to begin. Life has already begun everywhere. All you can do is notice which motion you are stepping into now. And remember, no matter what you choose, some version of you is already there waiting. Not every version of you is active. Not every branch of your identity is loud, moving, filled with choices. Some are quieter. Some do not interfere, do not cross, do not demand. They simply watch. Imagine countless versions of yourself standing in silence, observing the life you live, their eyes on you as if you were the one carrying their story forward. These are the versions that watch quietly, unseen but present, the silent witnesses of your existence. You've felt them before. That strange heaviness when you pause in the middle of an ordinary day, suddenly self-conscious, as if you are being observed. Science calls it the spotlight effect, the brain's habit of exaggerating how much attention others pay to you. But what if the attention you feel isn't from others at all? What if it is from yourself? Versions of you who stand just outside your awareness, watching your steps with quiet intensity. Philosophy has hinted at this. Foucault spoke of the panopticon, the idea that constant observation shapes behavior, even if no one is visibly watching. Perhaps the panopticon is not only social but existential. You are shaped not only by the eyes of others, but by the countless silent gazes of yourself, versions who do not live here but who nevertheless watch as if your choices matter to them too. Dreams sometimes reveal this. You dream of crowds standing still, staring, silent. You wake unsettled, unable to explain the weight of so many eyes. What if those crowds are not strangers? What if they are versions of you, gathered to observe, to witness, to quietly affirm that your life is not solitary, but connected? Their silence feels eerie, because you are not used to being surrounded by yourself. Science gestures at this possibility in subtle ways. Studies show that even imagining being watched changes the way the brain functions. People behave more ethically, more carefully, when they sense observation. If imagining observers has power, what would the reality of unseen versions watching mean? Perhaps the pull of conscience, the sudden wave of shame or pride, comes not only from memory or morality, but from their quiet gaze. You are not only judged by society, you are judged or affirmed by the silent versions of you who witness from elsewhere. Now think of déjà vu again. Sometimes it isn't a place or a person. It's a moment when you suddenly feel you've been here before, even though you haven't. Perhaps that sensation is not repetition, but recognition. Maybe another version of you lived this moment already, and now they are watching you live it too. Their awareness overlaps with yours for an instant, and the result is that eerie feeling of familiarity. The déjà vu is not error. It is an overlap of gazes. This reframes loneliness. When you feel unseen, unrecognized, unnoticed, you assume no one is watching, but you may be mistaken. Countless versions of you may be watching silently, unable to intervene, unable to reach, but deeply present. Their gaze is not cold, it is connection. You are not alone in your solitude. You are surrounded by quiet witnesses who share your breath, your choices, your existence. Consider relationships again. The people you love, the bonds you cherish, they feel singular here. But elsewhere, different choices shaped different bonds. Those versions may watch, quietly, as you live what they didn't. When you suddenly think of someone you left behind, perhaps it is not memory but resonance, another you watching them still, their gaze brushing against your awareness. The presence you feel is not only emotional, it is real. Imagine standing on a stage, performing not for strangers, but for yourself. Countless selves fill the theater, silent, attentive, each carrying their own version of your story. Some weep, some smile, some sit stone still, but all are watching. The play you perform is the life you live, and their silence is not judgment but reverence. They do not fade when the curtain falls. They remain, watching, always. Dreams hint at this too. Some people report lucid dreams where they find themselves observed by silent figures, dozens or hundreds of them. The dream feels overwhelming, unbearable, even. But perhaps that dream is truth revealed. Perhaps you glimpse the watchers, the versions of you who gather quietly, who follow your story because it is theirs too. Their silence is not absence. It is awe. This realization changes how you see your choices. You think your life is small, your actions insignificant. But if countless versions of you are watching, then nothing you do is without weight. Every breath, every word, every gesture ripples across branches, witnessed by selves who did not live this moment, but feel its impact nonetheless. Your life matters, not only here, but everywhere. Picture it tonight. A quiet room, the lights dim, the world hushed. You sit in stillness, and yet you are not alone. Around you stand countless versions of yourself, invisible but real, watching quietly. Some are older, some younger, some broken, some triumphant. They do not interfere. They do not speak, but they watch, as if your breath is their breath, your choices their choices, your story their story, and perhaps, in their own moments, you are watching them too. You are not solitary. You are a performer in an infinite theater of selves, each watching, each waiting, each silent, versions that watch quietly, always. Life feels like a single thread. You wake, you act, you choose, you sleep, and the thread stretches behind you, neat and unbroken. But the truth may be stranger. Existence is not one thread. It is a tree, splitting endlessly into branches. Every decision, every hesitation, every turn is not the end of one line, but the beginning of many. You live here, on this branch, but countless versions of you grow on others, each alive, each carrying its own leaves of experience. Existence is not singular. It is split into branches, a forest of selves spreading forever. Think of your smallest decisions. The moment you turned left instead of right, the time you spoke up instead of staying silent. These choices did not erase the alternatives. They created them. A version of you still walks down the right-hand path. A version of you still holds back their words. You are not one tree, you are part of a grove, each branch alive, each branch carrying you forward differently. The versions you don't see are not unreal. They are as alive as the one breathing here. Philosophy has long touched this idea. Borges wrote of the Garden of Forking Paths, a universe where every possibility is realized. Some physicists echo him with the many worlds interpretation. Each quantum event branches, producing endless realities. But beyond theory, you feel it. In regrets that cling too tightly, in déjà vu that unsettles you, in dreams that carry you to places you've never walked, but somehow know. These are not illusions. They are glimpses of branches, faint whispers from the lives you didn't live here. Memory itself reveals this structure. You recall an event, but you also imagine what could have been. That imagining feels as vivid as the memory. Why? Because both are real. Memory ties you to one branch, but imagination brushes against another. When you sit in silence replaying what if, you are not fantasizing. You are sensing a life unfolding elsewhere, a branch alive in its own direction. Dreams, too, show you branches. You wake from a dream convinced you lived another life, different job, different city, different love. Science says the brain mixes fragments. But perhaps dreams are windows, moments where the walls between branches thin, allowing you to glimpse the existence of selves who live what you didn't. That is why dreams sometimes leave you unsettled. You are not only imagining, you are remembering sideways. This reframes regret. You regret the branches you didn't climb, the ones you abandoned, the ones you cut too soon. But those branches are not gone. They continue, alive, carried by other versions of you. Regret is not about absence. It is resonance, the ache of feeling the tug of branches you are still connected to, even if you can't walk them here. The weight you feel is proof that existence is larger than one thread. It also reframes choice. You think choice defines your life, that saying yes or no locks you into one destiny forever. But if existence splits into branches, then every choice is lived. Somewhere, you are not erasing paths. You are multiplying them. Free will is not about selecting one possibility. It is about which version of you will inhabit which branch. The others still exist, carried by selves who continue elsewhere. Now imagine identity as a tree. Your roots are shared. All versions of you begin in the same soil. But from there, you split. Some branches reach toward sunlight. Others twist into shadow. Some break under storms. Others grow thick and strong. Each branch is real. Each carries the same origin. Each is you. The self you see here is one branch among many. You are not the whole tree. You are one angle of its growth. This realization explains the uncanny feeling of being more than yourself. Sometimes you sense a heaviness, as if your life is too full for one story. That is because it isn't one story. It is branches pressing together, their leaves rustling in resonance. You are not a thread. You are a forest, alive with selves unseen, whispering across branches. Science offers hints of this too. In biology, trees communicate underground through root systems, sharing nutrients and signals. Your existence may work the same way. Each version of you, though living separately, may still share roots, still send signals through the soil of reality. When you feel sudden intuition, when you dream vividly, when you sense futures already alive, perhaps it is not coincidence. Perhaps it is messages traveling through the roots, carried between branches of yourself. Picture it tonight, a vast forest stretching endlessly. Each tree is you, each branch is a version of your life, spreading upward, outward, splitting infinitely. You stand in one branch, feeling solid, believing it is the only one. But if you look closely, you see leaves brushing yours, shadows overlapping, roots entangled. You are never alone. You are one among many, part of a grove of selves. Existence is not a thread. It is split into branches, and every branch is alive. When you think of identity, you imagine it as a single voice, one continuous story told across years. You say, "This is me," as though the self were solid, unbroken, indivisible. But beneath that certainty lies something stranger. Identity is not one voice. It is many, layered atop one another, each speaking in whispers too faint to hear, each carrying choices and memories that never reached this version. You are not one identity. You are identities layered in silence, stacked invisibly within you, pressing against the surface like ghosts of lives unlived. Think about the times you've contradicted yourself. You wanted two opposite things at once. You felt both courage and fear, both hope and despair. You explained it away as complexity, but maybe it was more. Maybe it was not one self in conflict, but multiple selves layered inside you, each alive in silence, each pulling in a different direction. You do not argue with yourself. You argue with layers. Philosophy has long hinted at this. Hume declared the self an illusion, a bundle of perceptions tied loosely together. Derrida spoke of layers of meaning hidden beneath language. Perhaps identity itself is structured the same way, not singular, but layered, each level hidden beneath another. What you call you is simply the loudest layer, the one granted the stage for now. The others remain, silent but alive, waiting for cracks through which to speak. Dreams often reveal these hidden layers. You dream of being someone else, yet still yourself. You carry different names, different faces, different choices, but the sense of I persists. These dreams disturb you because they break the illusion of singular identity. But what if they are not illusions at all? What if they are glimpses of the silent layers, identities stacked within you, each living elsewhere, each brushing against your awareness while you sleep? Science provides unsettling parallels. Neuroscience shows that the brain does not have a single self-center. Instead, identity emerges from networks scattered across the brain, layered processes combining into the illusion of one voice. Split brain studies even reveal separate streams of awareness coexisting in silence, layered identities sharing one body. If this is true of the brain, why not of existence itself? Why not countless selves layered across realities, each carrying its own awareness, each alive beneath the surface. Think of memory again. You forget moments. Whole years blur into silence. You assume they are gone, but perhaps they are not gone. They are held by other layers of you, selves who remember what you cannot. Their silence is not absence. It is containment. They hold what you lost, living as archives of identity you no longer access here. Sometimes when a memory surfaces suddenly, it may not be recall, it may be contact. One silent layer whispering to you, pressing against the cracks. This also reframes guilt. You feel guilt for choices you made, even when you try to let them go. Perhaps the guilt lingers because another layer of you is still living through that choice, still carrying the weight. Their silence leaks into your awareness, reminding you of pain you no longer live here but that continues elsewhere. You are not haunted by memory, you are haunted by identity layered in silence. Relationships deepen this unease. You think of someone you no longer see, yet their presence clings, perhaps because, in another layer, another version of you is still with them, still living that bond. Their identity presses against yours, layering love and grief together. That's why absence feels incomplete. You are not missing what is gone, you are sensing what continues, silently beyond your reach. Picture your life as a palimpsest, an ancient manuscript written, erased, and rewritten countless times. Each layer of text remains faintly visible, ghostly, beneath the new words. Your identity is the same. The you see is only the latest inscription, the loudest voice. Beneath it are other texts, other lives, other yous, layered in silence, still legible if the light catches just right. You are not one story. You are a manuscript of selves, rewritten endlessly, but never erased. Dreams return to this truth again. Some people dream of strangers who feel deeply familiar, as if they were versions of themselves in disguise. Perhaps they are. Perhaps those figures are layers of you, manifesting briefly in dreams, trying to remind you that identity is not singular, that you are more than the self you carry here. You wake unsettled because the dream was not fantasy, it was recognition. This realization changes loneliness. You may feel alone, convinced you are one fragile self in a vast indifferent world. But if identities are layered, then you are never alone. You are surrounded by versions of yourself, silent but present, woven into your every breath. You are a chorus muted into one voice, a crowd condensed into one body. The silence is not emptiness, it is density. Now imagine standing before a mirror. You see your reflection, but look closer. Notice how the face seems to hold traces of others. Smiles you never smiled, lines you never lived, eyes that look older or younger than you are. Those are not tricks of the light. They are glimpses of silent layers, identities refusing to vanish, pressing faintly through the surface. Your reflection is not one, it is many, layered invisibly behind the glass. Tonight, as you rest, think of yourself not as a singular thread, but as a stack of selves, layered endlessly in silence. Each one carries choices, memories, lives you cannot see. You are the voice on top, but beneath you are countless others, waiting, watching, whispering. You are not one identity. You are many, layered in silence, alive forever. You believe you move through places, leaving them behind as you go. Childhood homes, old classrooms, city streets where you once walked, you imagine them as empty stages once you've stepped away. But what if you never truly leave? What if every place you've touched still holds a version of you, alive, breathing, lingering in silence? Places are not abandoned, they are filled with echoes of selves who remain. Think about the pull of returning to a place from your past. You step into the room, and suddenly the air feels charged. You see furniture, walls, windows, but you also feel presence, as if someone unseen still lives there. That someone is you, the version of you who laughed there, cried there, dreamed there. They do not vanish when you leave. They remain, layered into the walls, alive in their own threads of time. You sense them because they are still here, even if not in this version. Philosophy has often treated place as background, as stage. Heidegger, however, wrote of dwelling, the way human existence is rooted in places, shaped by them, inseparable from them. If existence is inseparable from place, then perhaps identity does not move freely at all. Perhaps parts of you remain wherever you lived, each one alive in its own stillness. You do not carry your whole self forward. You scatter, leaving fragments of identity lodged in every place you've touched. This explains why memory is so tied to space. Smells, sounds, sights. They can flood you with memories instantly, not because they recreate the past, but because they connect you to selves who remain there. The wave of nostalgia is not only recollection, it is resonance. You are brushing against a version of yourself still alive in that place, still awake, still breathing the air you once breathed. Neuroscience offers strange confirmation. The hippocampus, the brain's memory center, is deeply linked to spatial navigation. That is why memory and place are fused to recall who you were. You recall where you were. But what if this is not just wiring? What if the brain links memory and place because they are inseparable in reality? You don't only leave memories in places, you leave selves. Dreams reveal this too. How often do you dream of places from your past? Old houses, schools, streets, even places you cannot return to physically. They are vivid, alive, unchanged. You walk through them as though no time has passed. That's because for another you, no time has. They remain, still living those rooms, still inhabiting those spaces. Dreams may not recreate the past. They may reconnect you to selves still awake in those places. This reframes haunting. You think of ghosts as spirits of the dead, lingering in places. But perhaps the most common ghosts are not strangers at all. Perhaps they are versions of yourself. When you feel presence in an old place, when the air feels heavy, maybe you are not sensing someone else, you are sensing yourself. Places are filled with you, fragments scattered, selves that never left. Relationships amplify this truth. Consider the places where you loved and lost. The park bench, the apartment, the cafe. You may never return, but another you still sits there, still holds their hand, still whispers their name. That's why those places ache when you think of them. They are not empty. They are still occupied. You are still there, in versions that never moved forward. Picture your life as a constellation of places, each one holding a version of you. You are not moving linearly. You are expanding outward, scattering selves across the map of your existence. Each address, each corner, each room is alive with your presence. Some you remember vividly, others you have forgotten, but they remain, carrying versions of you who will never leave. Science offers another eerie parallel. Physicists speak of time as block-like, where every moment exists simultaneously, past and future equally real. If that is true, then every place you've touched still contains the self who touched it. They did not vanish into memory. They are alive in their own thread of time. You feel them, because time did not erase them. You are layered across places as much as across selves. This thought unsettles, but it also comforts. It means you are never lost. Even when you feel rootless, fragmented, scattered, you remain. The places that shaped you still hold you, still carry you, still breathe with your presence. You are not one traveler moving forward. You are countless echoes, lingering in every room, every street, every corner you've touched. Tonight, think of the places you've left behind, the ones you miss, the ones you fear, the ones you thought you outgrew. Know that you are still there. Somewhere, in silence, a version of you still sits in that chair, still looks out that window, still dreams in that bed. Places never empty. They hold you forever. You do not leave. You remain. Some moments pass and vanish, slipping into memory so quietly you barely notice. Others linger, replaying endlessly, looping in your mind, as if they refuse to let go. You tell yourself, it's because they mattered more, because your heart won't release them. But what if it isn't memory alone? What if those moments are still alive, replaying endlessly again in other branches of existence? What if the reason they won't fade is because you are still there, still living them, still trapped inside loops that never closed? Think of a mistake you've replayed in your mind. The words you shouldn't have said, the step you shouldn't have taken. You replay it over and over, unable to stop. Why? Perhaps because, somewhere, you are still saying those words, still taking that step, still living inside the echo. The replay is not imagination. It is resonance. You are brushing against the version of you who never moved past it. This explains why joy replays too. The kiss you never forget. The laughter that returns without warning. The victory that glows decades later. These moments shine not only because they mattered, but because somewhere they are still unfolding. You are still kissing, still laughing, still winning. The warmth you feel is not memory's echo. It is contact with selves who never left. Philosophy has long questioned the flow of time. Nietzsche's eternal recurrence imagined every moment repeating infinitely. Most read it as metaphor. But what if it is literal? What if each moment you live is not erased but replayed endlessly in parallel? Your life is not a river flowing forward. It is a sea of loops, each wave crashing forever. Some versions of you sail beyond, but others remain in the loops, living the same breath, the same choice, endlessly. Science hints at this in memory itself. Neuroscientists note that when you recall an event, the brain fires in patterns similar to when you lived it. In a sense, you relive the moment each time you remember. But perhaps you aren't just replaying inside your head. Perhaps you are aligning with versions of you still inside that moment, still living it endlessly. The act of remembering is not looking backward. It is brushing against the loop. Dreams amplify this. How often have you dreamt the same scenario, again and again? The same house, the same chase, the same unresolved struggle. You wake unsettled, unable to escape its return. Maybe that's because you can't. Somewhere, you are still inside that moment, living it endlessly. The dream is not invention, it is contact. You wake because your awareness slips back here, but when you sleep again, you may return. This reframes trauma. People who suffer trauma often say they relive it constantly, unable to escape. Perhaps it's not just psychological. Perhaps it's ontological. Somewhere the trauma is still happening, replaying endlessly again, and that version of you remains trapped. The weight you carry is not only memory, it is the presence of a self still inside the loop. Healing then is not forgetting, it is learning how to live alongside the loop, acknowledging the self who remains there. It also reframes nostalgia. When you replay a beautiful memory, it feels more alive than the present, perhaps because it is alive. Another, you still sits in that sunlight, still hears that song, still lives that joy. The ache you feel is not for something gone, it is for something that continues, just not here. Nostalgia is not longing for the past, it is resonance with selves who remain inside loops of joy. Picture it like this. Existence is a vast hall filled with rooms. In some rooms, moments are lived once, and the door closes. In others, the door never closes. The lights never go out. The moment replays endlessly again, looping without end. You walk through some rooms, you leave others behind, but versions of you remain in all of them. And sometimes, when the walls are thin, you hear echoes from those rooms, and you call it memory. Science again offers a parallel. Physicists speak of closed time-like curves, loops in space-time where events repeat. These curves remain theoretical, but perhaps life already works this way on a metaphysical level. Moments do not dissolve, they loop. You do not escape them by moving forward. You simply leave versions of yourself behind, still living inside them. Now think about why certain regrets or joys return so powerfully at night, when the world is quiet. It may be because silence allows the echoes to grow louder. The loops hum beneath awareness all the time. But in stillness, you finally hear them. The replay is not weakness, it is connection. You are not broken for reliving. You are brushing against selves still alive inside the loop. This realization can be heavy, but it can also comfort. It means you are not fragile for replaying the past. You are expansive. You are connected to endless versions of yourself, some who moved on, some who remain. The loops are not prisons. They are evidence that you are larger than one timeline, larger than one story. Tonight, think of the moment that replays most often for you, the one that clings, refusing to fade. Don't treat it as a ghost. Treat it as a doorway. Somewhere, a version of you is still inside, living it endlessly again. You are not imagining. You are listening. And you will always remain connected to that loop, because it is part of you, alive forever. There are parts of you that live in light, visible, named, acknowledged. But there are also parts that move in shadows, hidden from sight, barely sensed yet, deeply present. These are not strangers. They are versions of you, living quietly in the corners of existence, shaping your path in silence. You feel them sometimes as unease, as whispers at the edge of awareness, as movements you can't quite see. Selves moving in shadows are not imaginary. They are the versions of you who walk paths just beyond your vision, influencing you in ways you can't explain. Think about intuition. The sudden sense to stop, to turn, to wait, to speak. Science calls it pattern recognition. Your brain predicting outcomes before you consciously know. But what if it is more? What if intuition is the influence of selves in shadows, nudging you subtly, their choices brushing against yours, their breath whispering through the silence? They move unseen, but they are never absent. Philosophy has spoken of the unconscious, the hidden layers of mind shaping behavior without awareness. Freud called it repressed desire. Jung called it the shadow self. But perhaps the shadow is not only psychological, it is existential. The shadow is filled with versions of you, alive in other branches, hidden from direct sight, but always near. You are not only shaped by unconscious thought, you are shaped by unseen selves moving silently beside you. Dreams often bring these shadows closer. You dream of figures who follow you but never show their faces. You wake unsettled, convinced they mean something. Perhaps they do. Perhaps those faceless figures are the selves you cannot see clearly here, the versions of you who walk in parallel, moving in shadows just beyond awareness. Their lack of a face is not absence, it is limitation. You cannot yet see them, but you feel them. Science offers parallels again. In physics, dark matter fills the universe, unseen yet undeniable, shaping galaxies through invisible weight. Life may mirror this. The selves you cannot see are your dark matter, unseen yet shaping your existence, pulling you subtly, altering your gravity. You are not moved only by what you know, but by what you cannot see. Now think about déjà vu in another light. Sometimes it feels less like recognition, and more like shadow. The sense that you are not alone, that another presence walks beside you unseen. You dismiss it as imagination. But what if it is real? What if déjà vu is not only memory but contact? A moment when the shadows grow too close to ignore, when you sense selves moving beside you, almost visible. This reframes fear too. Fear often rises in silence, in places where nothing is wrong yet something feels wrong. You feel watched, unsettled, pulled toward unease. Perhaps that fear is not warning of danger from outside, but awareness of selves in shadows inside. Their presence is not threat, it is density. You are never only one, and your body knows it, even when your mind refuses. Relationships carry shadows as well. Have you ever felt tension with someone you barely know, or connection you can't explain? Perhaps it is because, in another branch, your selves are already entangled. The shadow of that entanglement bleeds through here, shaping your feelings before logic can explain. The bond you sense is not fantasy. It is resonance with selves moving in shadows. Picture a corridor at night. You walk forward, the floorboards creaking softly. You see nothing, yet you feel movement. The shadows shift, and you know you are not alone. That is your life. You walk one path, but countless others walk beside you in silence. They do not speak, they do not show themselves, but they remain. Their movements brush against you like wind through branches, shaping your direction whether you notice or not. Dreams remind us again. In nightmares, the shadow often becomes a pursuer, a figure chasing, unseen but relentless. You wake with fear, your heart pounding. But perhaps the pursuer is not enemy, but kin. Perhaps it is another you, a shadow self trying to reach you, trying to remind you that you are not singular. The terror you feel is not threat. It is recognition distorted by fear. This realization changes solitude. You believe you are alone when no one is near. But solitude may be impossible. You are always surrounded by selves, moving in shadows, unseen but alive, influencing your choices, whispering through your intuition, pressing against your awareness. Their presence may unsettle you, but it also means you are never truly isolated. You are a multitude walking together, even in silence. Now imagine identity as a lantern carried in darkness. The light shows one path clearly, but shadows stretch in every direction. In those shadows walk other yous, unseen but close. Sometimes they step into the light for an instant, through dreams, intuition, déjà vu before slipping back. You believe you are one, but you are always accompanied, always surrounded, always layered with selves in shadow. Tonight, sit in stillness, and notice the quiet. Listen for movements you cannot see, for whispers at the edge of thought. Don't dismiss them. Don't call them illusions. They are versions of you, moving in shadows, alive in silence, pressing faintly against your life. You are not one self in one light. You are many, and some of them move unseen, walking beside you forever. You've been taught that everything has a beginning, a middle, and an end. That time moves forward like a story, clean, structured, simple. But the deeper you go into consciousness, the more that illusion begins to crack. Not all timelines end. Some just bend, others loop. Some hide behind the edges of your life, continuing without you, because you are only one fragment of a much larger thread that refuses to be cut. There are moments you think have passed, long buried, forgotten, resolved, but they still live somewhere, still breathing. The timeline that held that heartbreak, that missed opportunity, that alternate version of a goodbye, it didn't vanish. It branched. It curved. It bled into a different direction and kept going without your awareness. Those timelines are not over. They are just elsewhere, continuing with their own momentum, as if you never stopped walking down them. Have you ever felt that ache for something you can't explain? A longing for a life you never lived? That ache is a signal, a bleed through, a thin membrane between this timeline and one that never ended, where your other self kept going, where you stayed instead of left, or left instead of stayed. The emotion leaks into this world like light through cracked glass, and when it touches you, you mistake it for confusion, but it's continuity. Science brushes the edges of this idea. Quantum physics speaks of superposition, where particles exist in multiple states until observed. In some interpretations, timelines exist the same way, concurrently. It is your consciousness that collapses the timeline you live, while the others continue unobserved. They do not require your attention to persist. They simply are, and they don't end. They refuse to. Memory is not the same as finality. Just because something is in the past does not mean it is over. You remember a childhood room, and somewhere in a thread you cannot see, it is still there. You recall a friend you lost, and somewhere you never lost them. That version of time still exists, looping, breathing, untouched by what came after. It doesn't matter that you moved on. That version didn't. This is why you wake sometimes with a feeling of being split, like your body is here, but your soul is somewhere else. Like your life is paused, waiting to reconnect with something you can't name. That isn't metaphor. It's the pull of parallel continuity. Other versions of your timeline are still in motion. They haven't closed, they haven't ended. And part of you knows. Think about decisions you've made, ones you thought were final. You chose the job. You left the city. You ended the relationship. You crossed the bridge and never looked back. But even as you moved forward, another timeline refused. It rejected your ending. It asked, what if we stayed? What if we said yes? And then it kept going, with a version of you who followed that question to its conclusion, or perhaps to its own branching path. This understanding transforms regret. Regret isn't just mourning what didn't happen. It's the pain of knowing that somewhere, it did. It's the quiet war between the timeline you live and the timelines that never ended. You regret not choosing a path, not because it's gone, but because it isn't. It lingers. It echoes. It continues without your permission. In dreams, these timelines sometimes touch. You walk streets that feel familiar, but don't exist here. You speak to people who died, but in the dream, they're alive. You return to jobs you never had, or families you never knew, but feel like home. These are not fantasy. They are timelines peeking through, brushing against your sleeping mind when your waking mind finally stops resisting. Time, as we live it, is shaped by narrative. We like stories with endings because they make us feel safe. But consciousness isn't a story, it's a labyrinth. One path leads to another, and another, and another, endlessly. Some routes you've taken, others you haven't. But they all still exist, refusing to close, waiting to be remembered, or perhaps waiting to be felt. And sometimes, just sometimes, those timelines reach back. You hear a voice that sounds like your own, but slightly different. You walk into a room and sense you've been there before, though you haven't. You feel like you left something somewhere you've never been. These are glitches, yes, but they're also echoes. The fingerprints of timelines you forgot to live, but that never stopped existing. Artists feel this in the act of creation. A painter lifts the brush, and suddenly sees the final image in their mind. A poet writes a line they didn't plan. A musician hears a melody before touching an instrument. These are not acts of genius. They are glimpses. The timeline where the art already exists simply lends itself for a moment to this one, because timelines don't end. They overlap, and in the overlap, things are born. So what does it mean to live with timelines refusing to end? It means you are never finished. No version of you is final. You are always spiraling, always diverging, always echoing through timelines that continue without your consent. It means the version of you that broke still exists, but so does the one that healed. The one who gave up still walks, but so does the one who kept going. The past didn't vanish. It rerouted. The future didn't wait. It branched. You are not a single moment in motion. You are a living intersection of infinite continuities. So pause for a moment. Think of a time in your life that felt like an ending. Now, imagine that somewhere, somehow, it wasn't it. You are not one person. You never have been. You're a shifting chorus of every version you've ever been, every version you could have been, and every version you still might become. And somehow, impossibly, they are all still here, not metaphorically, not as dusty memories or fleeting regrets, but as real as breath, as present as your next heartbeat. Your existence is not a straight path. It's a chamber of mirrors, and each reflection is a life you've lived or could have lived, standing right beside you, silently watching, endlessly aware. You've felt them before, haven't you? That odd sense someone is with you when no one is. That moment you look into your own eyes in the mirror and feel like something else is looking back. That sudden memory of a different choice. So vivid it almost feels like it really happened. Those aren't tricks of the mind. They're ruptures, soft edges where your timelines blur, and the other versions bleed through. In this room, right now, you are not alone. There's the version of you that stayed in a relationship you walked away from, the one who took the job you turned down, the one who moved to another city, said yes instead of no, tried instead of hesitated. Each of them walks with you, quietly. They don't interrupt, but they never leave. And neither do the versions that broke. The you that gave up, the one that never healed, the one who made the mistake and never found redemption. That version is still here too, not to haunt you, but to remind you of how many paths you still carry. You may have outrun some of them, buried them in silence, tried to forget, but they never stopped existing, because existence doesn't depend on your memory. It depends only on possibility. You see, time doesn't erase, it layers, and identity doesn't isolate. It multiplies. The idea that you are one, singular, solid self, that's a narrative your mind invented to feel safe, but reality never asked for your comfort. It only offers truth, and the truth is this. Consciousness is not a line, it's a lattice. Every choice, every hesitation, every dream, every fear, they all split you, not to break you, but to expand you. You are a vast network of selves, all breathing at once. And they seared, not lost. They seared, just unseen. The child you are still plays in the field of memory, still believes in things you've outgrown. The teenager you were still burns with rage, and hope, and confusion. The adult you might have become still lives in the house you never entered, beside the person you never met. These are not just memories or imaginings, they are realities, fragile, parallel, persistent. Sometimes, in your quietest moments, you feel them. You sit in a room you've never seen before, and feel comfort, as if you've been there. You read a sentence, and feel it was meant for a different you. You close your eyes and sense lives you never lived, pressing gently against the edges of your awareness. That is not madness. That is presence. And presence, in its deepest form, is plural. Even the future versions, those you have not met yet, hover close. The one who writes a book, who moves to the forest, who forgives, who starts again, who walks away, who finds peace. You think you're waiting to become them, but they're already watching, whispering back through time, offering you a signal. I am already here. You are already me. So when you feel overwhelmed, broken, or stuck, remember, you're not the only you carrying that pain. Somewhere, another version already healed. Somewhere, another version turned the page, and if you can imagine them, you can become them, because imagination is not fantasy. It's a doorway, a thread, a map. And every map leads to a version of you still alive. Do you know what this really means? It means you've never truly been alone. You've walked through grief, yes, but never without echoes of the version who endured it. You've felt lost, yes, but the version who found the way is still here, leaving signs, leaving feelings, leaving glimpses in dreams and daydreams and moments of déjà vu. You are not waiting to become someone else. You already are them. The only difference is where you are looking. Close your eyes, just for a moment. Breathe. Now imagine all the versions of you, in rooms you never entered, standing in lives you never lived. Imagine them turning toward you, not accusing, not mourning, just noticing, quietly, with understanding, with presence. And now, feel them noticing each other too. This whole time, they've been connected, not in chaos, but in harmony. A living constellation of selves. You are not separate from them. You are the center point they orbit, and they, every single one, are still here. They never left. You are not a timeline. You are a tapestry. Not a single thread running through a single path, but a weaving of infinite lives, some you remember, some you deny, some you've only dreamt of in passing. And yet, they all breathe through you. Every step you've taken, and every step you could have taken, are not opposites. They are companions, walking beside you, watching quietly, waiting patiently. You've met them already though. You may not have noticed. In the hesitation before a decision, in the strange comfort of a place you've never been, in the voice that whispers an answer you never learned. They arrive in flashes, in dreams, in feelings, in silence. They are not gone. They are simply layered. You were never meant to be just one version of yourself, because no one ever is. And now, you understand. The self you see in the mirror each morning is not the whole story. It's just the reflection closest to your current point in the maze. But every corridor is still open, every door still ajar. You could turn left, you could turn right, you could stay still and still become someone else entirely. That's not illusion, that's freedom. You were never alone. You were never broken. You were always plural. So as you drift tonight into that soft folding place between thought and sleep, don't try to silence the echoes. Let them in. Let the other versions walk with you a little longer. Let the child you once were hold your hand. Let the stranger you could become nod in quiet greeting. Let all of them remind you, was I meant to be this, or something else entirely? And the answer, as always, is both. Because even now as you listen, another version of you is listening too, somewhere else, in another moment, maybe earlier, maybe later. Maybe they sit, hearing this same story, with the same breath in their lungs and the same weight in their heart, asking the same question. So when you wake tomorrow, don't rush back into the fiction of singularity. Walk gently, with awareness. Notice the mirror that shifts when you move, the shadow that feels too familiar, the pull of something you didn't choose, but still feel. You are the memory and the possibility, the road taken and the road abandoned, the silence and the scream, the moment that happened and the moment that didn't, layered, held, eternal. Because, somewhere in that space, you are. Another version of you is watching, waiting, walking, and they too are wondering if you're still here. And you always will be. You always were.